Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, The Game. Happy Monday, Nashville. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser in for Jared Stillman today. Jared catching up on his vacation with just over a week until training camp starts for the Titans. Ian Safar is here as well. Gentlemen, how are we doing on this Monday?
Hey, we're doing great. I know Jared's still soaking up the sun down there in the Bahamas, but
For
we're
sure.
grinding away up here in Nashville.
Hey, he's got to recharge
I
because
know.
you're hitting the ground running a week from tomorrow. Players report to Titans training camp. We're going to have plenty of Titans talk throughout the show today as we prepare for training camp. Crazy to think we're, 2 weeks away from the Hall of Fame game?
Yeah.
I think it's the first couple days of August. So we will have live, real football coming up in less than 3 weeks.
So excited.
I can't wait.
And more importantly, what's better than the preseason, you got joint practices coming up.
Correct.
All the storylines will come out, especially from media members about what they're keeping eyes on. But I am very interested to see how well it's perceived with Jamal Adams, something that you missed, Jake, while you were gone.
Yes, I was out of town. I did catch that. But Jamal Adams, speaking of joint practices, quick turnaround facing his former team here in Nashville, right?
Yeah, how about
so that'll be some fun coming up during training camp as well. We're going to talk a lot of Titans in this first hour. Also, SEC Media Days going on down in Texas. So a lot of talk about that. We'll get to that coming up in the 3 o'clock hour, into the 4 o'clock hour as well. But a lot going on right now. Let's just warm up here with some of the headlines that we've got from over the weekend. Yesterday, the Copa America final between Argentina and Colombia. I know we wanted to talk about this.
You and I were texting some about this last night. It was
how does that happen?
I don't understand it. And our, one half of our show or one quarter of our show is here with us behind the scenes right now. He could probably talk more about this, but it was a disaster yesterday because of the whole ticketing issue. And then also just people storming and getting up on the gate. Like there's no reason for stuff like this to happen.
Yeah. And it just shows you South American soccer fans are
unreal,
a different breed of fan. Like you think college football fans. Now, I understand at Hard Rock Stadium, there's not a ton of University of Miami fans trying to break down the gate. I think they're giving those tickets away. But that stadium was not prepared for Colombians and Argentinians who paid thousands and thousands of dollars. And a lot of them didn't even get into the stadium because of the people running over the gates.
I know. These poor guys I saw videos of were talking to the news reporters about how they've spent thousands of dollars to end up getting to Miami, flying their families to try to go to a soccer game, and they can't even get in. And I saw kids being pulled away from the gates last night with officers on hand saying, hey, like we got to pull you over for safety. We'll find your parents later. It's wild.
Unbelievable. Argentina winning that one
Argentina
in the 116th minute, I believe.
112, something like that.
Yeah, late in extra time. Also had a couple of Spanish winners yesterday. Spain winning the Euros, and we saw Carlos Alcaraz take down Novak Djokovic in straight sets in Wimbledon. So a lot going on yesterday. Also, the MLB draft was yesterday.
Yeah.
Did not have an SEC player go number one overall.
No,
Travis Bazzana went number one from Oregon State.
We talked a lot about some, SEC players, you and I, with Nick Frazier, about how some guys had baller years. Jack Caglione went pretty early on.
He went sixth, I believe.
Sixth. That's right. And then just a few minutes ago, Kavaris Tears finally got drafted by the Padres.
Lots of Vols, which makes sense. You win the national championship. Obviously, you got a lot of good players, but lots of Vols have gone in the first couple rounds. Christian Moore went ninth, I believe, to the Angels, maybe eighth, eighth to the Angels.
Yeah.
And then we saw Blake Burke went last night. Billy Amick went last night. Drew Beam, I believe, just got drafted.
He did, yes.
Former Vol wasn't a part of the national championship team. Chase Burns went second overall, which kind of a shocker to me. I thought Condon was going to go 2.
That's what I was going to say.
The Reds went with Burns, and now Charlie Condon, who, again, I've mentioned this on air before, but shout out St. Cloud Rocks alum Charlie Condon. He is now going to the thin air and the altitude over at Coors Field with his 70 grade power. Lots of SEC guys, and I think some good fits last night in the MLB draft.
Yeah, there absolutely was some great things that happened last night. Also, super quickly, too, Robbie Stanley would be very disappointed if I didn't bring it up. But Carlos Alcaraz, at 21 years old, won Wimbledon yet again, by the way. And I did not know this. He has his own Netflix documentary on the way. And right now, he's made over $35 million. And I guess, I mean, is this amateur, something earnings? I don't know. It's ATP earnings is what it's classified as. I don't know what that stands for, but anyway, that's a lot of money.
ATP, I think, is like the PGA of tennis, like
I guess
tournament stuff.
Yeah. Okay, cool. But he just won the French Open last month too, before Wimbledon. So, golly, this kid's on fire.
I mean, tennis for years and years and years. I went back a few months ago, I think, and I checked how many of the majors that Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic had won. And it was a ridiculous amount. Over like a 10-year stretch, out of the 40 majors, they had won like 37 of them between the three of them. And you thought maybe with Federer retiring and Nadal getting up there and Djokovic starting to get past his mind now.
Exactly.
I'm taking it over.
Yeah. And now, on a different note, I wanted to briefly talk about this because obviously there was a former teammate of his that passed away recently because of a car accident. You've got, a former USC receiver in Jordan Addison getting arrested for a DUI. And it was his teammate. Was it Kyrie
Jackson?
Kyrie Jackson. That's right. I was going to say Kyrie's for some reason. I don't know why. But Kyrie passed away from being hit by a car, right? Yep. And then you see, someone he played with get a DUI. He was caught asleep behind his white Rolls Royce, Jake. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's not a good look for Jordan Addison.
No.
And, glad that everybody was okay in that situation.
Yeah.
And, hopefully he learns from it. And, we've obviously seen tragedies with situations like that. Las Vegas a few years ago with Henry Ruggs was probably the most notable one. So glad that no one was hurt. Hopefully he learns from it. Addison, still a really young guy, but plenty of potential. And you hope he doesn't waste it.
Jake, did you see he deleted all of his Vikings things earlier today? Yeah.
Interesting.
From his Instagram, all gone. So I'm not sure what that's going to mean long-term for him, or if the Vikings have kind of already let him know that he may have his outright release. There's no news on him whatsoever. I don't follow many people from Minneapolis, so I couldn't tell you what's going on that front, but we'll find out pretty quickly because the storylines have moved really rapidly on stuff like this recently.
And he had a really good rookie year up in Minnesota. Looked like him and Justin Jefferson might make up one of the better wide receiver tandems in the league. We'll see if anything comes out of that, whether there's any league discipline or something like that. I'm sure we'll have some clarity on that situation in the next couple of weeks. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you want to chime in, you can text or call. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Going to be a fun show. Again, we're going to talk some Titans coming up in this first hour. Jamal Adams signing. Do the Titans have another move up their sleeve possibly before training camp opens up in a week? And I wanted to get into these ESPN top 10 rankings that they've been releasing. They do this every year where they poll anonymous executive scouts and front office members, coaches, all these guys, and come up with the top 10 players at each position. We'll go through how many the Titans have, how many of the Titans could have after the end of the season. That's all coming up in this first hour. And again, SEC Media Days going on. Vanderbilt will hit the podium coming up in about 2 hours. Yeah. So we'll check in on Clark Lee and his program later on in the show. He also joined Robbie and Rexroad this morning. He did. So plenty to get to there with Vandy and much more. Before we take our first break here, Home Run Derby tonight. And we're gonna get into that later on in the show. Home Run Derby, it's one of my favorite meaningless events of the sports calendar.
Is it really meaningless?
Oh, it's meaningless. 100%.
It's fun though.
Totally.
It's like the dunk contest.
It almost hurts players more so. You see that.
Yeah.
There's this rumor.
Guys will ruin their swing.
That players actually adjust their swing and are so used to trying to hit the long ball.
Yeah.
That they can't readjust when the season kicks back up when the All-Star break is over.
Yes.
And they go on this crazy cold streak in the second half of the season.
It happens all the time. And that's why you kind of want these guys who are 3 outcome guys anyway, who are walk, strikeout, home run. those are the guys you want to throw into the home run derby. Like Prince Fielder back in the day was a perfect home run derby guy because he wasn't looking to hit for contact anyway. He just went up there looking to hit home runs. So I'm excited for the home run derby. I think it should be a fun one tonight. Although I will preface, I probably won't be watching it live. Coming up in about 50 minutes, College Football 25 is being released. So,
I know. Many of our resident millennials are going to be playing this game for the next 72 hours, probably. So
yes. Maybe I will play and listen to the home run derby right here on the game because we're going to carry it right here coming up at 7.
Starting at 7. Yep.
Yeah. That's what you call a tease right there.
That's right. But
you are a company man, Jake.
That's right.
I do what I can. Home run derby at 7 o'clock tonight.
Yeah.
We'll go through that later on in the show. I kind of want to see your guys' thoughts on all of these meaningless all-star events, slam dunk contest, 3-point contest, the skills competition in the NHL. We'll talk about all of that coming up later on in the show. Should be a fun one. Lots of Titans, lots of college football coming up. Jared still on vacation. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser in here on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I mean, how much of a concern, I guess, is just health at safety, and having and being able to rely on these guys. I mean, even Hooker, who has had, a lot of time missed.
Hey, listen, I think Molden will still be the starter, but you're 1,000% right, man. Health, availability is something that these three guys, Monty Hooker, Elijah Molden, and Jamal Adams, none of them have had a full season of playing all 17 games and being available for all games in the last 3 years. And I think that's something that you have to look at and say, hey, you know what? Mike Brown, Matthew Jackson, these are guys that you could see them sneak onto the roster just because of that fact and also because of what they do special teams wise.
That was Teron Davenport talking about the Jamal Adams signing. And what's the Titans' health situation at safety? None of those guys are known for being Iron Men out there. Amani Hooker, Elijah Molden, Jamal Adams. Stillman Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser in for Jared Stillman as he wraps up his vacation ahead of training camp next week. We're getting set for training camp. Titans made a move, brought in Jamal Adams, 1 year, slightly over $1 million contract.
Yeah, it's a 1-1-2-5.
Yes. So
Right.
not a lot for the former All-Pro with the Jets, guy who drew a large trade package to go to the Seahawks and just didn't pan out. Got himself the nickname Blitz Boy because that was pretty much all he could do and wasn't out on the field all that much. Keyser, I know that you guys were on the air last week when this went down, but thoughts on this signing and the impact that Adams might have on this Titan secondary?
I wouldn't call it an overreaction. I just thought we would lay it out realistically. He's played 10 games in the last 2 years. The biggest question is his availability. That's immediately where we went to. That's going to be the conversation around him, I think, even going all the way through training camp, Jake. And I think that's the most evident thing. When he was 22 through 25 years old, those were when the best days and we saw his best football. So, he did have a 9.5 sack year as a safety, which was an NFL record at the time. And I thought that we laid it out perfectly. It's going to be, what can he make the most out of his time here in Nashville? And so he's really gambling on himself. And it's really, I don't know if I want to call it a win-win yet for the Titans, Jake, because they don't have anything to really lose on the other end of it either, other than maybe just cutting him if it doesn't work out through training camp. But I think the way I look at it is, there's still a concern with the depth at safety for the Titans. Now, Teron had a great story with Matthew Jackson, but albeit you've got to see these guys show up at training camp. That's enough time to really see something, at least early on, to make a good impression, at least for this team, I would have to say, because any depth is good depth for the Titans, I think, going into this year, Jake. I know that the resident Titans fan in you from Virginia has seen that over the course of the last few years. So there is a lot of cause for concern with the signing. However, if he does mentally reset, if he resets as a pro physically, how much different can he look?
When I first saw this, I was surprised by it, I think was my first reaction, because I didn't feel like he kind of fit the mold of what the Titans needed.
Yeah.
But seeing the contract, it's really such a low-risk move, and he's still 28 years old.
About to be 29.
About to be 29, but still not past a point in age where you're like, okay, well, he's fallen off the cliff.
And he's coming off of a hamstring injury too.
Which, as Titans fans know more than anybody else, maybe, hamstrings, they can linger. Even year to year sometimes. Corey Davis was the prime example of that. I believe he had a hamstring injury every year he was here.
Yep.
But Jamal Adams, I think you have to frame this in how he's going to be used. And the way he was used with New York, with Denard Wilson as his DB's coach, he was an all-pro player. I'm not saying he's going to be an all-pro player, but I think you can have packages for him where he's effective. I think that's how you have to view this signing, instead of saying, okay, immediately plug in Adams as your second safety next to Amani Hooker. I don't think on 70% of snaps you're going to see Hooker and Adams out there, but I think Adams can be a good box safety. Maybe you even plug him in as a sub linebacker on some passing downs and have him just be your coverage linebacker. We saw it with, was it Mark Barron with the Rams, who was a safety most of his career, and then as he kind of got older, he transitioned to be more of a linebacker. I think Adams brings value to this team. Again, We just heard the TD clip. As long as he can stay healthy, which has been a
Exactly.
big if over the last couple of seasons. But I like the move. It's so low risk. And there's a reason this guy was a top 10 pick only 7 years ago.
Yeah.
He was picked the pick after Corey Davis, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep, 6th overall.
Yep,
Yeah,
6th
that's
overall,
right.
right behind Corey Davis. So I get it. There's kind of been a bad vibe around Jamal Adams
Yeah.
from his time in Seattle, but I think when you kind of look at the player and look past some of the I'm blanking on the word, like the connotation around him, like
Yeah.
I think that you can see how he can make an impact on this team this season, even if it's not as your second safety. I think the question is there another move coming?
That's what I was asking on Saturday would that be a potential idea to maybe, and I'm not saying it has to be Justin Simmons, but
Yeah.
what if they bring in someone to push the lineup a little bit where it's, hey, let's see what you got, because we clearly have someone hungry that wants a spot here too. So how does that work out? And to go back on your point with the draft night with Corey Davis, Joe Rex wrote, I wanted to go to this as quickly as I could because this is something that I thought was interesting. So Joe tweeted, this was after the signing. He had thrown out there on Twitter, and I quote, there was a strong push on draft night 2017 to take Adams. John Robinson went with Corey Davis instead. And 7 years later, he is a Titan. So there you go. And now he's here. But ultimately, how much could life be different now? If you look at it backwards and you're like,
That is true.
What if they had drafted him? Like, what if we never had Corey Davis in Nashville? The defense might have looked a lot different.
Well, and you think about the devaluation of the safety position. Think about the last couple of years. I don't think there's been a safety picked in the first round in the last 2 years.
Great question.
I think there's been a couple that were slated to be in there. The Lions took the Alabama Brian Branch last year, and he was far and away the number one safety in the class, and he fell to the second round. Jamal Adams went 6th overall.
Yeah.
If you're taking a safety at 6th, and I know that draft position isn't everything, I'm not trying to say that we should feel good about this just because he was picked 6th overall, but a guy has to have a lot of talent for you to take him at 6 as a safety.
Yeah.
It's kind of the Saquon Barkley argument. Like, yes, has Saquon Barkley not really lived up to his draft pick? For sure. But if you're picked 2nd overall as a running back, you've got all the talent to make it work. So maybe getting Jamal Adams back under Denard Wilson and using him to his strengths instead of throwing him out there and saying, go be our second safety. I think he could be an impact player for this team because he still makes big plays. And that's something the Titans have been missing the last few years, is a guy who can go make a play, go sack the quarterback and knock the football out, go blow up a run play and put them behind the chains and make it 2nd and 14 instead of 2nd and 10. Like, I think Adams can be that guy. Do I want him out there on 3rd and 7 late in the game
that's where I was
when
at.
you need a stop? Probably not.
No.
But if you want a guy who you can just say, hey, go, be a game wrecker
That's
for
him.
40% of the snaps in a game, I kind of like it. And obviously, I don't know if that's how they're going to use him. But I think if that's their plan, I love it on such a low risk move.
Yeah.
1 year, low money, low commitment. Just go see if this guy who was clearly a generational safety talent 7 years ago coming out of LSU, see if you can get a little bit of that back later on in his career.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that with Jamal as well, Jake, you have to consider the fact that what else is he bringing besides the physicality to this roster? And is he going to fit the dynamic that's in the locker room? And more importantly, not only is he a loudmouth, Arden Key is a loudmouth too, and not for the most negative reasons, but for what could possibly be for the right reasons. This is Denard's first crack with the Titans this season. So how does his game plan do with the Titans? And obviously, Jamal's another guy that knows him in and out. And so how beneficial is that going to be this season? Because that was something we asked ourselves the last few days of how does that work out long-term wise for the organization? Because there are young guys on this team that have to get used to the pro style. So how does Jamal help that dynamic, or is he not as helpful? That could also be another thing to keep an eye on.
I think one thing is abundantly clear from the moves the Titans have made this offseason in Denard Wilson's secondary. They are going to play aggressive on defense. I mean, you look at the corners that they brought in. L'Jarius Sneed, Chidobe Awuzie, drafted Brownlee Jr.
Yep.
out of Louisville, Jarvis Brownlee Jr. All those guys are in your face. I'm going to press you. I'm going to knock you down, and I'm going to blow up your route before you even start.
Exactly.
Then you bring in Kenneth Murray at linebacker, who is a pin your ears back attack linebacker. Jamal Adams, guy who can go blitz. He can go blow up a play. They're going to be aggressive. As much as we're excited to see this offense open up and be more of a pass-first offense, I can't wait to see what this secondary does against a loaded Bears wide receiver core in week 1.
That's what I was hoping for too. And think about how good it could be to possibly see Sweat and Simmons firing on all cylinders. And then teams are going to start thinking twice about throwing it down the middle, perhaps, if Jamal is on his game. And then you've also got, and what if Amani comes out balling too?
He's got to stay healthy.
That's the thing.
Like, remember week 1 last year where Amani Hooker ripped the ball away from the return man on the first play of the game, first play of the season against the Saints,
it was fun.
And also had a pick in that game. And I think everybody who was a Titans fan watching that game was like, oh my, we might see the Amani Hooker breakout year where he becomes a Minkah Fitzpatrick type player in that secondary, and he just couldn't stay healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And if he does stay healthy, I think he would be up there with L'Jarius Sneed as the second best guy in that secondary. I think with Roger McCreary,
probably,
maybe. But I was kind of surprised. We're going to get into the ESPN top 10 that they've been releasing for all these positions. Jamal Adams, a guy who was in the top 10 back in his Jets days. But Amani Hooker didn't even receive a vote. Like, not even one. And do I think Amani Hooker is a top 10 safety in the league? No. But do I think he's in the top 16, 17? Possibly.
Yeah.
And I think they did 10 who were ranked, then like 5 honorable mention, and then there were 3 or 4 others who got votes. So he wasn't even considered 16, 17, 18, which surprised me. But the Titans did have a few guys who ended up on those lists, whether that's ranked, honorable mention, received votes, and a few more still to come out. We're going to dive in to that next. These ESPN top 10 position rankings, Titans currently only have one guy inside the top 10 at their position, with still 3 positions to come. Do we think they're correct? Do we think there are some guys who could work their way onto those lists coming up next year? We'll talk about that next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you want to jump in, you can text or call. Jared Stillman still out this week. Jake Lyman, Nick Keys are in for him here on Stillman & Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company on this Monday afternoon, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser in for Jared Stillman today. Talking some Titans here in hour number one. If you want to jump in, you can text or call 615-737-1025. We teased it a little bit talking about these top 10 rankings that ESPN does. They reach out to all these executives and scouts and coaches,
all the fancy people,
and try and just come up with a general top 10 at every NFL position. And we've seen a lot of these come out so far. Quarterbacks, I think, came out earlier today. Will Levis was not mentioned on there.
Womp womp.
He was not top 10, not honorable mention, did not receive any votes. The first four were all AFC guys. It was the four that you would think of: Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, and Lamar Jackson. Matthew Stafford rounded out the top five, which a little bit of a surprise to me.
Yeah.
But he was in there, followed by Justin Herbert, I think. But we've seen defensive tackle come out, offensive tackle, interior line, running backs, edge rushers has come out as well, and safeties. Here are the Titans who have at least appeared on those lists. Jeffrey Simmons, fourth defensive tackle.
That makes sense.
Which I think is fair. I think Chris Jones was number one. So I think that's about right for where you would put Jeffrey Simmons. Top 5 defensive tackle in the game. I'm good with that.
Now, Frazier thought he would be number one, quite frankly.
And I think there's an argument for that. He hasn't really been healthy the last couple of years,
that's my caveat too.
Which is tough. He had, like, after that Bengals playoff game, where he had, I think, 2 or 3 of the 9 sacks in that game and was a complete game wrecker. I thought maybe that was the start of his ascension to being towards the Aaron Donald tier. Maybe not towards the Aaron Donald tier, the tier below Aaron Donald.
Like right there.
You can't compare anybody to Aaron Donald quite yet. But I think with a good year this year, there's no telling you how high he could rise.
Exactly.
I think he could be in the Chris Jones conversation next year. Talking about Titans in the top 10. We were just talking about Jamal Adams. We have Adam Portland on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, wanting to talk about the newest Titans safety. Adam, what's going on?
Well, I'm just thinking about that, dude. Like, you were talking about us potentially getting him in the draft. Dude, I would have been so mad about that. I don't hate the court, and this is just going to get me down a road, man. I'm just sitting here driving going, I'm going to call him. Because I hate that people think Corey Davis sucked. He didn't suck, man. He had Marcus. I think Marcus sucked. And people don't want to say that because he was our pretty boy and he was awesome and he was a nice guy, whatever. He was a sucky quarterback, man. And there's a reason that he's not starting in the NFL right now. And the bigger bust to me would be like the corner that we got at 17, 18, whatever that was. Because we had 2 first-round picks that year, if you'll remember.
Yep,
and it
Jackson.
was like Jackson. Yeah, we had a lot more misses besides Corey Davis, but like all his prime years were with Marcus. And then we finally get a year with Tannehill, and we hadn't already picked up the option. Then he gets kicked out of town. So I don't like the way Corey Davis gets treated around here, dude. That's all I'm saying. Like, I'll always go to bat for that guy.
Thank you for the call, Adam. I agree with you. I am a Corey Davis stan till I die.
Here we go.
So I remember the day he was drafted. I had just finished a high school baseball game, and I got on the bus right as he was picked. And I jumped out of my seat. I loved Corey Davis. I had watched all his film at Western Michigan. I loved Corey Davis. The injuries were the big thing. I don't 100% agree that Marcus was the whole problem. I think the big thing is that Davis really didn't have a full season where he was on the field until his last year.
Sure.
And yes, Tannehill probably helped, where he finished with 985 yards or something like that. I know he was very, very close to 1,000 his last year as a Titan. But I agree. I don't love the Corey Davis slander. Was he worth the 5th overall pick? Absolutely not. Was he a competent wide receiver? I think so.
Yeah. I mean, also too, he's not playing. Remember, he retired and then he came out of retirement.
He tried to come back.
Yeah. I just wanted to pull this up because Eric Allen, this was his story when it came out, said that Corey Davis had been released from his reserve retired list. So he is a free agent if he does want to try to make the comeback. but I just don't see how that works for him.
I'm not trying to say Corey Davis was worth the 5th overall pick. I think
Sure.
Marshawn Lattimore would have been the
Oh
best
my,
pick you
yeah,
could have made there.
There are so many caveats to this.
But picking Jamal Adams, I would have been mad about that. Great safety. You don't take a safety with the 5th overall pick. I'll pull out my Jared. A guard, a safety. Don't take a safety with the 5th overall pick.
Exactly.
The Jets got a few good years out of him, but I think
Yeah.
they regret that just as much as anybody. Man, that was a top 10 littered with guys who are no longer effective in the league. John Ross went 9th. Who else was up there? Myles Garrett
McCaffrey went 8th.
first.
Solomon Thomas went 3rd. I have the list in front of me. Sorry.
Yeah, Solomon Thomas, Mitch Trubisky was in that
Yep.
draft too.
He's at number 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Myles
And-
Garrett, 1st overall.
And
Yeah.
the Bears trading up in front of the 49ers, giving up like a 3rd round pick to take Mitch Trubisky.
I know, it was wild.
But that's also the year Patrick Mahomes got drafted. So, anyway, yeah, I guess you can't say the best pick would have been Marshawn Lattimore there. The best pick would have been Patrick Mahomes.
And the Titans also got Adoree Jackson as well.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Another guy, plenty of talent, just never panned out.
yeah.
He had one good year.
Probably would have rather have picked Jabril Peppers, honestly.
Peppers has bounced around.
He has.
He was in the Odell Beckham trade from the
Oh, that's
Giants to the
right.
Browns.
He
Now
was.
I think he's with the Patriots, if I'm not
Let's
mistaken.
see.
Maybe he's moved on again. But he was a fun college player to watch.
Yes, he is with them. Yeah.
If he's a legend in college football 25
That'd be
on like
cool.
Ultimate Team or something, I'd play with Jabril Peppers. He played both ways.
Yeah.
Running back and safety. Anyway, thank you for the call, Adam. A good conversation about that 2017 top 10 where the Titans came away with Corey Davis. Back to these ESPN top 10 rankings.
Yes.
We mentioned Jeffrey Simmons was the 4th defensive tackle. So far, that's it for Titans in the top 10. Lloyd Cushenberry was an honorable mention for interior offensive lineman. Titans free agent center they brought in this year. Tony Pollard received votes as the running back. So not honorable mention, but at least somebody put him in the top 10. And Peter Skoronski received votes at interior offensive lineman. So you look at the guys who at least got it one vote for being top 10 at their position. 2 of them weren't on the Titans last year. The others, Jeffrey Simmons 4th and Peter Skoronski, still have linebacker, wide receiver, and cornerback left of these rankings. I think we will see at least 2 more Titans, at least mentioned in these articles before we're done. It's not. I think
So you said it's linebacker and what else?
We're not seeing any Titans linebackers. in there.
I
I
don't
promise you
think so.
that.
That's why I was asking. I was like, I don't know about that.
Linebacker, wide receiver, cornerback. I think it's safe to say L'Jarius Sneed is a top
Sneed
10
will be in there.
corner,
Yeah,
right?
Sneed will be in there.
I would bet he's even top 5.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I would bet top 5, but for sure top 10.
Mm-hmm.
Wide receiver, I think it's safe to say that one of DeAndre Hopkins or Calvin Ridley will at least receive a vote.
Yeah, I think that's fair to
Maybe
say.
Ridley will get a vote. Or will receive a vote.
Yeah.
I
It
think-
won't be Hopkins.
Not Hopkins?
No.
Really? You don't think it'd be Hop?
No, not at this point.
I kind of agree with you. I think Ridley, because of all the talent he has and like the route running, like I know there are a ton of people who there are a few like young wide receivers who will say the guy that they watch most is Calvin Ridley because of his route running and ability to get out of breaks and stuff like that. So I think maybe you're right that there's a scout out there or an executive who is a big Calvin Ridley fan
Sure.
and throws a vote out there. But I also think Hopkins, just because of the longevity and went over 1,000 yards last season.
Well, him and Calvin did. And I mean, honestly, guys, they were 2 in the same wide receivers last year. So really, you could see votes for both of them.
I think at least one will be
Yeah.
on there. So that would give the Titans 2 top 10 players,
Correct.
Simmons and L'Jarius Sneed, and then 4 who received votes if at least one of the wide receivers gets on there.
Right.
Do we think anybody has been snubbed of not getting their name mentioned, not getting any votes? I don't think there's any top 10 snubs.
I
but
mean, if anybody was to get another vote, I'd say maybe Tony Pollard. Maybe.
see, the guy that I kind of thought might sneak in with a vote or 2 was Harold Landry.
Yeah.
Possibly.
I mean, I could see that one too. What about Jadobi?
Well, and we mentioned Amani Hooker too.
Yeah.
I thought Hooker would at least receive a vote, and I thought Harold Landry would at least receive a vote because he tore the ACL, but he still had, 10 and a half sacks last year?
Yeah, he played pretty well.
And he had an awesome year the year before his injury. I think Landry and Hooker would be the two that I expected to at least get a vote or two.
Yeah, Landry did have 10 and a half last year. Yeah, maybe Harold is a better pick, but I don't know why. Maybe it's just like the Dallas Cowboy little like chapter in my head from growing up, just thinking to myself, yeah, cheer for the Cowboys a little bit. I don't know. Tony is like the undersized, like, not thought of guy that usually can step up in weird times, but 1,000 yards last year, 6 touchdowns. It felt like he played a pretty big impact in that Dallas Cowboys offense, and he could be big here too.
Yeah, I think he could have been in the honorable mention instead of the receive votes.
Probably, yeah. That's where I'd lean more towards with him.
But it just shows you right now, the Titans, according to the league, don't have a ton of premium talent. Jeffrey Simmons, L'Jarius Sneed are going to be the only two top 10 players at their position for the Titans. When we come back, we're going to talk about who could be in the top 10 next year. 365 days later, with a good season, who do you think could make that next step and turn themselves into an elite player at their position? Plenty of options out there. I got a few in my mind. I'm sure you've got a few in yours, Keezer.
Yeah.
If you have a few in yours, text or call 615-737-1025. We'd love to hear from you. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Again, Jake Lyman, Nick Keezer, in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Jake Lyman, Nick Keezer, in for Jared on this Monday afternoon. Talking about Titans in the top 10. ESPN every year releases these top 10 rankings at every position in the NFL that is voted on by executive scouts, coaches, and the Titans are a little hard to find on some of these lists. Jeffrey Simmons, 4th on defensive tackle, a couple others getting honorable mention or receiving votes. We expect to see L'Jarius Sneed, maybe Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins pop up in the next couple of days. But the question is, who is on the precipice of taking that step to be in the top 10 after this season? I think there are a few good candidates for the Titans who I expect to break out this year, and maybe the league starts to take notice, because I don't want to be one of the people who say that the media hates the Titans and everybody ignores the Titans, but the Titans are, unless you blow up and prove that you are one of the best in the league, nobody is going to pay much attention. If you are a great player, but not an elite player, you're going to fall down to good in the eyes of the national media because you are in a smaller market.
Yeah.
So, Nick Keyser, my question to you, and my question to everybody out there, if you want to get involved, 615-737-1025, you can text or call. Who are you looking at this year who could take that step and become an elite player and start to get noticed on a national stage?
So we've talked about Jeffrey Simmons, Calvin Ridley. Obviously, those are two guys for me that I think will stick around on that list. You and I could easily agree on that more than likely because of what they could do this year. I think given it being his sophomore year and maybe he gets to learn more from the Callahans. Now we have 3 Callahans in town, by the way, spelled differently. But have to always make the Boyd joke too, because
will the soccer coach be helping out with the Titans development too?
Maybe. I don't know. The way that they're playing, probably not.
Just a Tommy Boy reunion over here.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. But to your
Big
question,
Tom.
to your question, I think Skoronski does show up on this next year. You have to hope, at least, because
That's a good guess.
Yeah, you have to hope that he does, because if he's coming out of his first year, where I do agree it was a little bit of a rough year, and I understand you have to learn through the curves, and as you become a pro, you have to get acclimated to what your team is, and this is not an easy place to get acclimated as a rookie, given how hard it is in general to step it up and be a pro every single day. I think Skoronski is someone I hope becomes a more identifiable piece when you play against the Titans, where people are talking about them in the same breath as Peter, because you want that offensive line to be damn good, especially if you have a good running game too. The other player, I would say, he's coming at 27 years old next year, because you were talking about for next year. I would hope, and I know that he will have played 6 NFL seasons by this point, Jake, but Amani Hooker, I think, has got to maybe get some respect to his name a little bit more. I feel like that's something that is highlighted when the Titans defense is talked about. Sometimes, I wouldn't say a whole lot. I think he's a highlighted piece when he makes the big plays. He's out of Iowa. Iowa didn't have much to be excited about most of the time. But look,
on defense, they do.
Yeah, sure. I mean, everybody knows that it's a low-scoring place to go. But, he had 4 picks back in 2020. I thought we would get that same style of guy moving forward. I remember watching him thinking, he's cool, he's exciting. So I think there's a possibility Amani could be something to keep your eyes on, especially after this year, learning from Jamal and some other vets as well.
I think Hooker, it starts with just being out there for 15, 16, maybe even 17 games in a season. I had Skoronski written down too. I was surprised to see he even received votes because, as Jared has noted, it was a subpar rookie season for Peter Skoronski, for a guy that, coming out of the draft, everyone said this is a plug-and-play all-pro left guard, like Quentin Nelson. Like, that was kind of the, maybe not the comp, but the reputation that he came in with. Like, hey, he could play tackle and be a serviceable tackle for you, but if you put him at left guard, he will be Quentin Nelson from day one and be one of the best left guards in the league. And he wasn't that his rookie year. You hope that without an appendectomy and a full year in the NFL, and now Bill Callahan coming over, maybe he does take that step and becomes one of the top 10 interior offensive linemen. Here are the 2 names I had written down.
Okay.
Neither of them, actually, we don't know for sure on one. Tajay Spears is a guy that I have written down. I think it's going to depend on how they platoon him and Tony Pollard, because maybe he won't get as much recognition if he's getting, half the carries
Yeah.
of some of these running backs. Speaking of which, Derrick Henry was 9 on this list for anyone wondering.
Really?
Yes, Derrick Henry was ranked as the 9th best running back in the
Okay.
NFL. The other name that I had, Roger McCreary. And I don't know, maybe there's a chance that somebody throws a vote in for him. And I don't know, I guess nickelbacks are sorted into cornerbacks on this, which
Probably.
because right now I would say Roger McCreary probably is a top 10 nickelback in the game, but he's not a top 10 cornerback overall in the game.
No.
But I think those are the two guys that aren't going to be on these lists that next year could possibly be top 10 if they live up to the hype that they're getting heading into this season.
I like that a lot. And, to your style of the question here, or the way that you have phrased it, is that would be year 4 for Roger. So
Yes.
you have to look at it in terms of, okay, he'll be 26 years old by the time that season starts. Hopefully he's got some more interceptions to his resume as well, because he only has 2 so far. So that number's got to change, I think, personally. And there's more analytics that you could look at for a guy like him, like, batting those balls down, or,
Batting them into his teammates' hands.
yeah, exactly. So there could be those things that you could look at as well. But those are interesting names. I don't know. I like your dark horse pick for Tajay Spears.
I think
I do.
Spears, if he is the 1A and Pollard is the 1B,
Yeah.
which is how I view it heading into the season, I think Spears will be not the bell cow, but I think he's going to be the feature back.
Sure.
And I think we're going to see Pollard used kind of as the change of pace and when Spears needs a breather. I think if Spears, I think there's a chance Spears ends up with 1,500 yards from scrimmage, like
Total yards.
rushing and receiving. I think that's fair.
I mean, yeah,
That would be a lot.
Like
that would be
I think
a lot,
it's I think that's a high bar, but let's say 1,000 yards rushing, 450 receiving.
Okay.
I'm just putting it out there. That might be high. I do have a bold prediction here for you.
Okay, what's your bold spot here?
Spears and McCreary are my two that I think are going to be top 10. I think Will Levis will be honorable mention on this list next year.
Really?
Yes.
With
Okay.
with what type of season, Jake?
I think he is going to emerge as a top half of the league quarterback, which would be honorable mention if there are 10.
Is that the expectation
If
that we
there-
should have of him, though?
I think it has to be, right? If you are saying after this year that Levis is a below average quarterback, do you want to stick with him?
Well, in your window's less than 2 years to figure it out, too. So
CJ Stroud, for context, was 7th on the
Okay.
list after his rookie season. I am going to say that Will Levis will be on the honorable mention after his second season, which would mean he is a top 15 quarterback in the NFL.
I'm not there yet,
Bold
but it is
take.
bold. It is bold. Hey, and we did bold NFL takes. You were
I missed
right
it. thinking
thinking with our show,
I missed it.
and you weren't even here. Just telekinesis powers overseas in Norway or something. Golly.
I just feel good about this situation with Levis this
Okay.
year. I think the offensive line, it's going to be enough to let him find those. Like, you've given him the veteran targets who are going to find the pockets where they can get open. And I think the offensive line is going to give him enough time to find them, which
Okay.
was not the case the last couple of years. But this will be my bold take. I think that Will Levis will be honorable mention, not just receive votes. I think he will be honorable mention at
Yeah.
least on this list next year.
There's no.
I do think the left side, Nick,
Yeah, you're good.
the left side of the line with Skoronski and Latham have some pretty good potential
I
to
agree.
be, I don't know if Latham can crack the top 10 in one season,
But maybe starts getting
but
votes
he
after
might
his rookie year.
he might get a vote.
Yeah.
I do think Skoronski could take a big step this year, and he could probably crack. Who's a top guard anyways? Like,
Zach Martin's the name that always comes to mind.
so
but
it's hard to name them. And so when you're drafted high, you kind of get a little bit of name recognition.
yeah,
That might bump you up a little bit. But I think Latham and Skoronski both on the left side have a good chance potential to grow this year.
well, in center too, with Lloyd Cushenberry, I think I brought this up a few weeks ago, but remember that 2 years ago when the Titans lost those last 7 games, uh, a lot of people pointed to other injuries and Tannehill wasn't healthy. I think the biggest thing was that Ben Jones wasn't healthy.
Yeah, that was a big problem.
Like, the offensive line was night and day different when Ben Jones was out there versus when he wasn't. And I'm not saying Lloyd Cushenberry is going to be Ben Jones, but there was a big difference between Ben Jones and Aaron Brewer at center. I think having a center who can be the quarterback of that offensive line is going to do wonders for the guys to his left and right, whether that's Sadiq Charles or Dylan Radence or Daniel Brunskill or whoever it is at right guard. I think that's going to be huge. Right tackle's the question mark. They don't have a right tackle.
Fair enough.
But I think the offensive line is going to be serviceable enough to allow Will Levis to find those veteran receivers.
Yeah.
And I think he is going to be at least honorable mention next year when ESPN releases their top 10 quarterbacks.
And I think you were hitting the point exactly where I was going to go with this quick was the synergy level, I think, is going to make a lot more sense for this team this year. Obviously, fresh new faces, some new players are in town. There's a lot of hope and aspiration for the two-tone blue, and you have to be excited about that. But the players are too. The roster's healthy, so you have to think, how do they all benefit one another? You talked about it already too, and I hit on this last week. The style of the defense, the style of the offense. We clearly know where the defense ranks with this. They are really aggressive.
Yeah.
It's a matter of, can the offense be as effective, if not more than, when the ball is live in the air for a regular season game? Because if the defense lives up to what we usually see out of them, even a glimpse of it, Titans could have a pretty good season in front of them, honestly. I mean, that's just the whole honest truth. Denard Wilson, has a lot to work with as well. So, Jake, these are high expectations.
Hey, we'll
but I
revisit
like
these.
them.
We'll revisit these coming up in a year when these are re-released by ESPN, their top 10 rankings at every position. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you want to get involved, you can text or call. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser in for Jared. Guys, it's finally here. It is here. We are 40 seconds away, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, then you must be living under a rock, and I'll tell you next. We are within 30 seconds now. We'll let you know coming up next. Stillman Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. After 11 years, we have made it, ladies and gentlemen. College Football 25, to the ones who opted deluxe edition, has been released as of 3 p.m. Central Time. It's a miracle. We've made it. After over a decade since NCAA Football 14, we have a new college football video game. Stillman and Company, Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser, Ian Safar, here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. I just got a text that servers are already crashing as everybody jumps on all at once. See, and that's kind of why I'm glad that we're in here till 6. They get to knock the bugs out of the way, and I'll show up and be able to jump right on.
I know. I was telling you at the break, I could care less to play it today because there are going to be impurities the first few days. They're going to work it out. They're going to have to update the game.
Yep.
They're going to have to play it on Thursday. People are going to be like, but I wish it was the perfect game now. And then Thursday, I'm going to be like, I have the best version possible.
I'm so excited. I've been waiting for this for way too long.
All of us have.
I bought a PS3 while I was in college just so I could play NCAA Football 14
Did
again.
you really?
I did. I bought it was like $100, and I somehow got NCAA Football 14 for pretty cheap because it was hard to find for a while there. Like you'd have to pay $150 on eBay to get it. And I turned Memphis into a national champion.
Oh, wow.
I turned my Hokies into a national champion. I
course you
believe I
did.
was the head coach at Tennessee the last time I played, but we are finally back. I will be starting my dynasty as the offensive coordinator with the great Wyoming Cowboys coming up in about 3.5 hours here. For those of you who don't care listening, I think for a lot of, I would say people, men under 40, I would say this is a big deal for most of them because let's go back 11 years. That would be men under 30 probably were excited about NCAA Football 14 and those yearly releases and all of that and playing dynasty mode. I think that for a majority of college football fans under 40, this is a pretty big deal that college football video games are back.
Absolutely. I mean, look, this is exciting. It's another way to engage with a sport that you love. And I always looked forward to the games coming out because it's been something that you can relate more to. Like when you go to the games, you're more familiar. And this is how, like, quite frankly, growing up, it was easier for me to follow sports after playing the games because
100%.
you knew the players' names. You kind of knew what to watch for in the games too. So not to be, too like millennial with like video games make a big difference in my life, but I think it's a fact because if it's, you're watching and learning, the game kind of teaches you through some things where you maybe don't watch for those things normally. I mean, and by the way, it's, this is the first time in over 4,000 days that EA has a college football game. So that's a wild streak to not have any type of new game related to college football.
And I 100% agree with you saying it's how you learn games. Like,
yes,
my household wasn't a huge hockey house growing up, but when I was like 9 or 10, I bought the NHL games and I loved them. And that is how I learned hockey and the rules of hockey and learned players and all that stuff. And now I'm a hockey fan. But these games, college football games are the best just because of, like, in Madden, there are 32 teams. In your franchise mode or whatever, you can be a head coach, and it's like you just play the same season trying to win a Super Bowl over and over.
yes.
But in these games, you get to recruit. And guess what? If you're a good coach at Wyoming, maybe a Big Ten school comes knocking and wants to hire you, and you can go take another job. It's immersive. It's fun. And, just scrolling through Twitter today, it was like every other tweet was about it's finally here.
Yep.
College football 25. I think they tweeted during the national championship game 3+ years ago that it was coming back.
Yes, they were trying to bring it back, and I believe it was EA itself shot it down quickly.
Yes.
I think so.
Well, the lawsuit was what forced them to stop a while ago because of the name, image, and likeness, but now that's back. EA has said that there are no major opt-outs to this game, so pretty much every player that is on your favorite team is in the game. You can play with them, and they're not quarterback number 5 like they were 10 years ago. It's
They all get copies of the game. I bet there wasn't really an incentive
It was $600 and a copy of the game
right now
for them to opt in.
Yes. So
But I believe the cover athletes got like 6-figure deals
I'm sure.
to be on the cover. And then a few others got deals in the 4 figures, 5 figures to promote the game on their social media. So there's more than just the $600 and a copy of the game. Maybe if you're a walk-on, that's what you got.
I mean, why not?
But if you're, Travis Hunter, I'm sure made a ton of money. I know Arch Manning, they said, made like $40,000 for him finally deciding to be in the game.
So hear me out on this.
Yep.
And I want to see if this works. I know you and I will not be together tomorrow, but take a picture if you get the physical game and tag us at 1025 the game, because we've been talking about it. Because when I was at the store over the weekend, because I went and got my new system to play my games, and this was not just because of college football. I will say that. I will preface with that, but it is very helpful. So the guy at the store told me that, hey, if you come back Thursday night at 7, even though you have it online, bring your receipt. And he's like, I don't know why, but you have to come in person, word of mouth. Tell me you bought it. Show me the receipt, and I'm going to be able to give you the physical game copy, because there's so many requests to have the physical copy of the game.
Yeah, my PlayStation is digital only, so it doesn't even take discs. So I did the pre-order, the deluxe edition, and I am raring to go. For
I would even beg to say, if you even have any proof of way of showing that you got the game, go to a store.
I might have to
say, hey, I bought it. Is there any way I can get the actual physical copy of this?
I don't even need the disc. Just give me the case. I kind of want the case. I love this on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Stephen from Hendersonville says, bull, expletive. I'm a man. I'm over 40, and I'm still excited about the new NCAA football game.
Gundy.
I was trying to be general. I figured 40 was kind of a dividing line, but I'm glad everybody's excited about this. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
I know I'm starting as Wyoming. I know Connor Newt is excited. He's going to be the head coach of MTSU. I can see Nick Frazier fist pumping in the background, the newest head coach of the SMU Mustangs.
Stadium at night.
My first thing I will be doing, I will be loading up the Hokies in Lane Stadium to see Enter Sandman. Enter Sandman's not in the game, but they do kind of a theatrical version of it with a general rock song. And then I will be taking a knee or take a delay a game. I don't know what I should do. Some sort of
a delay game.
There needs to be some sort of sacrifice as we finally made it to college football 25.
You can honor it some way.
We'll see. We'll do some sort of ceremony to get it out of the way before.
But one team that you can check out, and we'll hear from Clark Lee soon, by the way.
Yep.
If you do go to, I've seen plenty of videos with Vanderbilt, and it is their new stadium, which is really cool.
Yeah, they sent in the renderings of what the stadium is going to look like when it's finished. And I know that one of the end zones will be finished by the time they open the season on Labor Day weekend. The other one will be half finished. I saw a picture of it the other day. It doesn't look like a complete construction site anymore.
So is the one that's going to be done, is that the scoreboard side or the suite side?
It is the scoreboard side with the basketball facility. That will be done. The suite side is getting closer.
Okay.
But if you want to see the full finished product, go play as Vanderbilt in a college football video game.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Go check it out. Yeah.
That they did that. I'm glad. But I mean, what would have been the point of sending the old stadium? Like, if you've got the renderings and they can make the stadium off of that, do it. I'm a little disappointed Northwestern didn't send their practice facility that they're going to be playing in on the water as what I think they sent their old stadium.
I saw that. Yeah.
Excited for this. It's going to be fun. And like you mentioned, Nick, Clark Lee coming up. I misspoke earlier. I was reading the release of the times in Eastern time, not Central time. So Clark Lee coming up at the podium in just about 5 minutes. We're going to carry some of that live here on Stillman and Company. SC Media Day sponsored by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. We're going to hear from Clark Lee. He was on the show with Robbie and Rexroad earlier
Yes, he
this morning.
was.
We'll hear a little bit of that later on in the show and talk some Vandy football, some Vols football, and SEC in general in what is going to be one of the more fun years of SEC football we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say that I took away from Clark's conversation with the guys this morning is there were 53 new players added to this team this year, and it's a really different looking team from what he's ever had. And so I'm interested to see how he handles that, how much he puts hype around some of his team, maybe in just a few minutes here. If he's asked about it early on, what have been the overall challenges with him and, getting all that done. Tim Beck is now there as well. So how much of a difference does that make for them this year? But another thing as well, he's also taking on this big responsibility to manage the defense.
Yep.
So how much is he going to prioritize that, and how much of a difference is that going to make? He said he enjoyed being able to teach players once again more in depth than he usually gets to. So I thought that was fascinating. I'd like to know more of what that looks like. That'd be a cool, like, my journalism head is like, hey, I would love to sit down and see how this works and operates for you now, because you don't have a DC, but how does this work for you guys as a program? So those are things I want to hear a little bit more on as he comes up here to the podium in just a few minutes. Jake, I know that you are, good ties with Vandy because you call the women's basketball games. So what do you want? I know that we have to go to break soon. He's not up there yet, but what are you looking forward to him possibly talking about? Is there something that you want him to kind of touch on?
I think you talked about Tim Beck, and they're bringing him over their quarterback from New Mexico State, where Tim Beck was last year as the OC. Diego Pavia is likely going to be the starter, who he's really good. Like he's kind of slept on. He balled out against Auburn when they played the Tigers last year. So
they beat him pretty good.
I'm excited to hear about the offense. And like you said, Clark calling the defense, how much of an impact that going to have? They bring back those two great safeties, DeRicky Wright and CJ Taylor. So excited to hear from Clark Lee. We'll talk some Vandy football coming up next as SEC Media Days roll along. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser in for Jared Stillman here on Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
All right, let's talk about my friends at Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I'm telling you, I've been using Hiller for years, and I absolutely love them. Ever since I moved into my first home, which was, 6 years ago, I have been a customer with Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. And this year, Hiller is celebrating their 34th year in business this month. They're bringing the celebration to you with their birthday bash. So from now until July 31st, enjoy free smart thermostats with select new HVAC systems, free water tests, $300 off new tankless water heaters, and if you buy 10, you'll get 2 free landscape lights. So celebrate Hiller's birthday bash all month long with, again, my friends at Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Again, they take great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Again, proud supporters, the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, celebrating 34 years in business. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today.
Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, broadcasting live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Swag surfing here in studio
Heck yeah, man.
as we celebrate the new college football video game being released. Speaking of college football, SEC Media Days are going on down in Texas this week. And Vanderbilt about to come up to the podium in a couple of minutes here. We're keeping an eye on it. Going to hear from Clark Lee live for a little bit. All of our coverage from SEC Media Days sponsored by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Vandy coming off a tough season, won their first 2 games, then lost their final 10, 0-8 in the SEC. Commodores trying to bounce back, brought in a lot of transfers, changed up offensive coordinators. Clark Lee's running the defense now. Going to be a very different looking Commodores team on West End this year. And they open up their season against Virginia Tech over at First Bank Stadium on August 31st. Excited for that. And about to hear from Clark Lee. Heard from him this morning.
Yeah.
You were there, Nick Keyser. Any big takeaways from his time on the morning show?
Yeah, I would say just on top of the 53 new guys on his team, that is going to be something I feel means more for them this year. No pun intended with the SEC motto, but I truly believe in listening to Clark the last year, because I do get the field the phone calls with him coming in and then listening to him. It really has been a fun 3-year process for him to kind of go through this grind. You know, they've been slept on and whatnot, but I think it's very fascinating to see that he can connect with these players. And so how can he kind of continue to do that? And I think he's only getting better at it. And so hopefully this year they can build on that foundation, because he has surely set himself up for success.
Well, Clark Lee is at the podium right now down at SEC Media Days. Let's hear from the head Commodore himself.
Barrel. On behalf of Vanderbilt football, we hope for a full recovery for the city, but also our thoughts remain with anyone who's suffered loss. I'd also like to send my heartfelt condolences to the Kiffin family with the recent passing of Monty Kiffin. Coach Kiffin certainly left his mark on our game. His contributions to the coaching profession were monumental. His legacy will continue to inspire and guide us forward. As always, I'd be remiss not to thank Chancellor Diermeyer and Candace Lee for allowing me the opportunity to represent our great university and the privilege of working with our coaches, players, and staff back home in Nashville. It's great to be in Dallas. There's such a rich tradition of football excellence at every level in Texas. We have 21 players on our roster from this state, and we're excited for continued recruiting success here, particularly with the SEC expansion in the region. I have 3 players with me today that have been connected to our program since my beginning. CJ Taylor and Gunnar Hansen were a part of the COVID recruiting class that I inherited in my first year. Both have developed into highly productive players. CJ has been the most explosive playmaker on our defense for the past 2 seasons, and Gunnar anchors our offensive line, having amassed 22 starts, including 17 consecutive. You'll also meet Langston Patterson today. Langston was early to buy into the vision for what's possible with Vanderbilt football as our first committed player in my time as head coach. Langston finished last season as our most productive player on defense and is poised to have a great continued success in his career this season. As we grow success in time, there will be a few guys that I'll remember as critical to setting the foundation for our program. CJ, Gunnar, and Langston are certainly a part of that group. A year ago, I spoke to you about our program taking the next step, about building on the progress we made from year 1 to year 2. As I've said in the past, success is seldom linear, and unfortunately, we dipped in our performance and fell well short of our goal of competing in postseason play. It's a core belief of mine that challenges present opportunities, specifically opportunities for growth. And with that in mind, at the conclusion of the last season, I set out to understand more about our shortcomings so that I could make adjustments to get us back on track. I approached every decision this all season looking to answer 2 important questions. What am I meant to learn from this adversity? And how can we use it as an inflection point and a catalyst to our future success? From this exercise, we've changed in 3 fundamental ways. First, we've changed the way we train. It was clear we weren't developing physically at a rate that was closing the gap between us and our league peers, and that a new approach was needed in the weight room. This led to the hire of Robert Steiner, who brings an excellent track record of developing football teams while also building culture in the weight room. Coach Steiner's impact has been immediate, and our team has benefited in measurable ways from his philosophy and approach. Second, we've changed our tactical systems on offense and defense. In the role of offensive coordinator, I hired Tim Beck, who joins us from New Mexico State. Last season, Tim engineered the number 14 rushing offense and the number 12 offense in yards per play. The improvement made by his unit in 2 years at New Mexico State stood out to me and demonstrates the type of developmental success needed at Vanderbilt. He also brings 10 years of experience as a head coach, including a national championship in 2011. Along with Tim, I decided to take over the role as defensive coordinator. This is a job that I know well, and my belief that I could positively impact this side of the ball kept me from having to put anyone else in front of our defensive players. Consequently, I've grown closer to the team and my work with the defense, as I'm able to build connection through teaching the game that we love and share. In taking on this responsibility, I needed to round out the staff with someone who had the experience to strengthen our operational systems while sharing in the responsibilities that traditionally fall to the head coach. Jerry Kill brings to our staff 175 wins over 24 years as a head coach. He's built programs at challenging places throughout his career, and I can think of no one better to lock arms with as we continue our climb at Vanderbilt. Finally, we've expedited the transformation of our roster. This has required that we fully embrace changes in the college football landscape and actively participate in both the transfer portal and NIL. Falling behind in the NIL and transfer portal space has erased much of the progress we made in our first 2 years. As I've stated in the past, it's impossible to function in the portal without resources, and it's taken time for us to build the infrastructure that allows us both to retain our team and be competitive in that market. Without Candace Lee's support and competitive toughness, we would still be stuck in our old strategy. As it is, we've been able to adjust and adapt, and though we still have a ways to go, we're in a much better position to support our team now than we were a year ago. Roster transformation is about more than enhancing talent and skill. It's also been important for us to address the spirit of our program and shed the mindset of our past. We'll have 53 players on our roster this season that weren't with us a year ago. And of our 120 players, 106 have been recruited into my vision for success at Vanderbilt. This will be the first season in which the majority of the team signed up for the mission we're on, which is a long way from the initial team of 98 we fielded in 2021. When I accepted the job at Vanderbilt, I set out to build a program that serves the long-term interests of the players, one that is the caretaker of future success, the steward of holistic development, and healthy experience. Even as the context for our game changes, I will not abandon this mission. It's what I believe in and the only way I know how to coach. With that said, we do have to adjust our course as the ground beneath our feet shifts, but in doing so, we don't have to lose our souls. We still have choices. People first, mission always. Our challenge now is to uphold our righteous standards while embracing a more short-term strategy of winning football. This is the reality of our game now and what winning requires of us. I'm proud of the efforts we've made to position our program to get back on track. I believe wholeheartedly in the mission we're on, and I look forward to taking the field with Team 4 in just a few weeks.
Thank you, Coach. If you have a question, please raise your hand. We'll get a microphone. Please give your name and affiliation. We have Grant, Dylan, and Dinah. We will get a microphone to you. Okay, we're going to start, Coach, in the section.
Again, that was Clark Lee down at SEC Media Days. All our coverage from down there in Dallas, sponsored by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. A lot of good stuff there from Clark Lee, talking about his Vandy team in his 4th year at the helm. A lot of changes for the Commodores this year. We'll react to everything he said there and give our thoughts on a very important year for the Commodores in year 4 of Clark Lee. Again, Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Jake Lyman and Nick Keyser in for Jared today. The Game Summer Ticket Tour is back. Join our own Joe Dubin at Yazoo Brewing Company at 900 River Bluff Drive in Madison this Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m. as he gives away tickets to upcoming concerts in Nashville, including Def Leppard, Bush, Train, Dierks Bentley, and more. Also get signed up for the grand prize, tickets to a Preds home game, a Sounds game, and to the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix. For more details, visit thegamenashville.com/tour. We just heard from Clark Lee at the podium down in Dallas at SEC Media Days. And again, all our SEC Media Day coverage sponsored by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Nick, a lot of good stuff there from Clark Lee, similar to what he talked about on the morning show with Robbie and Rex Road earlier today. But clearly, Clark Lee saw what happened last year. They took a big step back after finally beating 2 SEC teams the year before. And he said, this isn't acceptable. We're going to change our staff. We're going to change our conditioning, our weight training, and we're going to change a lot of our players too. 53 newcomers on this team heading into 2024.
And I feel like his staff was challenged last year with that mentality of, if we're not going to change, we're going to make changes to our staff, basically. And I thought it was interesting that the first and foremost change that he mentioned was the strength training and how they take care of their bodies, how they do nutrition, all of that. And I remember the guys, Robbie and Joe, they hit on that a lot last year when Clark hopped on, and the way that they were perceiving the recovery from games and how they were handling things. And there were some injuries, and, quarterback last year was a big question mark at times. And so how do they handle that this year and what feels different? I know that DeRicky Wright was someone that was a pretty big guy that vocalized, what the experience was like. And I remember hearing from him and just how much, he backed Clark's vision for the team. So it's there, and this is team 4, like he said, and he's lost 27 games so far. So, patience is wearing thin, but I also have the belief that the school is supporting a guy that knows, like he just said, he said, I will not abandon my mission. We have choices, people first, mission always. So they've got the right thing, at the forefront. It's just a matter of, can this be the year that they finally look more like a winning team? They don't have to be an above 500 team, Jake. I think they just need to be bowl eligible, and they will look so much better moving forward for sure.
You mentioned DeRicky Wright, which I think is one of the more interesting developments of this offseason for Vanderbilt. He hopped in the transfer portal and was committed to Texas A&M and then came back.
I know.
I mean,
Isn't
how rare is that, especially going to a place like A&M that has so many resources, especially for their football team. A lot of money down there in College Station. And DeRicky Wright came back, wanted to finish what he started on West End. And him and CJ Taylor, think what you want about Vanderbilt football. CJ Taylor and DeRicky Wright are one of the best safety tandems in the SEC.
Absolutely.
And I get it. There are probably people laughing out there. How can Vanderbilt have the best anything in the SEC after going 0-8 last year? But if you watch Vanderbilt football games, CJ Taylor could play anywhere in the SEC,
Oh, he was awesome.
and he would fit in perfectly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he had plenty of offers to go somewhere else too.
Hey, Warren County guy too. I mean, he's
right. McMinnville,
yeah.
I believe.
Yes.
Yeah,
you're right. Look at you. Yeah.
And Andrew Allegretta on his calls, whenever CJ makes a play, calls him the kid from McMinnville. So that is where I pulled that one from.
Because that rings. Yeah.
Yes.
Gotta love it. But yeah, Jake, there's lots of good takeaways from what Clark had to say. And he asked himself some good questions. And I want to run back through this. He addressed, what did I learn from adversity? What can I do to use that for this year? What lessons can he ultimately take away from the last little bit here and use that as an advantage? So, because this has been a program, even before he's at middle, and not to put him down whatsoever, but there were a lot of issues at that point in time. And so going in a clear direction with a guy that played at Vandy, but then also had a fresh vision of what today's football looks like, I think Clark has handled it as well as he possibly could. But, he did mention, and we talked about this before his opening statement, Tim Beck is in. Clark said at 14th best, I think, what was it? Not just offense, but passing.
14th best rushing offense.
Was it rushing?
And
Yeah,
12th
that's right.
best yards per play, I think was what he said.
So, I mean, that's fine company. That's pretty good, I would say.
Earlier today on Robbie and Rex Road, Clark Lee did talk about Tim Beck's offensive style. Here's what he said about what we can expect as he moves over from New Mexico State.
What I think is unique about Tim's system is you have all these run aspects that are challenging, but he really learned the air raid system when he was at TCU, and so when we run past Kelly against them, I mean, we're seeing every concept that we'll see in the fall. So I think there's a lot to it. You have to be really skilled as a teacher and a coach to get those things taught and executed. And again, I've been really pleased with the progress they've made so far this summer.
Again, Clark Lee on Robbie and Rex Road earlier this morning talking about Tim Beck, new offensive coordinator, coming up from New Mexico State. And you might be able to call the Commodores New Mexico State North this year. Brought over their offensive coordinator, Tim Beck, their quarterback, Diego Pavia, who, again, I mentioned earlier, I think there was a ranking that came out that had him ranked as the 16th best quarterback in the SEC. And I think that's just saying, oh, he has a V next to his name. He's at the bottom. Diego Pavia is a good player. But the one that I want to point to, and I think I've mentioned this on the show before, Jerry Kill. He was the head coach at New Mexico State.
Mm-hmm.
He stepped down and now has come on as an advisor to Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. He had the same role at Virginia Tech while I was a student there, Jerry Kill. He came over from Minnesota and helped Justin Fuente. Justin Fuente did not have a very good time at Virginia Tech.
No, and you didn't like going to see him play
No,
either.
he had a pretty rough time as the head coach at Virginia Tech. Jerry Kill came in and helped that team to a 9-3 record and almost went to the ACC championship and the Orange Bowl. So Jerry Kill, despite not being head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, that can be your CEO, a guy who can kind of oversee and, hey, if the defensive backs aren't showing up, he can go get after the defensive backs coach, and Clark can focus on being the head coach and doing all of his duties and kind of splits up what needs to be done. I'm excited to see what this Vanderbilt team looks like with those three guys. I get it. They're coming from New Mexico State, which isn't exactly known for being a football powerhouse.
Yeah.
But based on what they've done throughout their careers, Jerry Kill, Diego Pavia, Tim Beck, I think they're going to be good fits here and could end up being a reason why Vanderbilt takes a big step this year.
Yeah, and those guys are looking to elevate their careers as well. And what better place to do it than Nashville, Tennessee?
The SEC.
Yeah, and lots of people are coming here. Obviously it's a popular little, spot. Obviously, you got the Preds and the Titans are garnering all these seasoned vets for what it's worth. And, obviously this is a school that wants to be something special. And that's everybody's goal, is to be special. But one other thing that stuck out to me was another nugget before we go to break as well, is he says without Candace Lee, they would be stuck in their old ways. And so he's leaning on the leadership and the trust that they've put him in this position to be successful. And I feel like he is doing everything he can. Then again, they are the ones that evaluate him and the success that he has had so far. He's 9-27, I think is what
that's what it said.
So to me, like I said, I think bowl eligibility has got to be the goal this year, because last year was, and he was, and he said there, we fell short of that goal. And if they don't get there, Jake, I think it's time to start questioning if this is the right staff that gets the job done or not.
Well, we'll talk about that next. We're going to go through what's the ceiling, what's the floor for this Vanderbilt team in 2024. And for any Vols fans out there, we're going to get to you guys coming up later in the show. We'll get to you in the 4 o'clock hour. We're going to talk about what the Vols might look like as Josh Heupel will step to the podium tomorrow morning down in Dallas at SEC Media Days. But again, coming up next, we're going to keep talking Vanderbilt football. How high can Clark Lee and his team fly in 2024? Or could things go south again for this Vanderbilt team? That's up next. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser, in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
what I want the fans to see is a fast, aggressive, fun, physical group that's out there playing the game they love and doing it together. And I think good defense is inspirational. I mean, you can sense a connectedness. Again, you can sense an attitude and a physical presence. Those are the things that I'm really interested in having show up. My job is to make sure we're doing the things schematically and tactically that are allowing our players to have success. And so I've had a blast, guys. I can't tell you how reinvigorating it has been for me to be able to connect with these guys and teach again, just to teach and train and share that passion with our players. And, I've been able to grow closer to the team because of the work that I've done with the defense.
Clark Lee on Robbie and Rex Road this morning as he prepares for his 4th year as the head coach of Vanderbilt. Football starts August 31st against my Virginia Tech Hokies. Jake Lyman, Nick Keys are in for Jared today. Ian Safar here as well. Talking some Vandy football as Clark Lee is still at the podium down in Dallas for SEC Media Days. We heard his opening statement earlier. And again, he was on the show with Joe and Robbie earlier. So if you missed that, check it out on the podcast. You can hear that full conversation. Nick, I think it's time to – we're not going to make record predictions here necessarily, but
No.
What is the ceiling for this Vanderbilt team coming off a 2-10 year where they beat Hawaii and Alabama A&M at home to start the season and then did not win the rest of the year? And what's the floor and what are the consequences of both of those things as you look at it?
Yeah, look, and I was at one of the 2 wins last year. My now wife and I went to the game in the rain against Hawaii.
I was at both of the 2 wins.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. But I think the atmosphere itself obviously was unique because of the construction. But all things aside, like I could feel the energy percolating in the air with it. Just I felt like this could be an atmosphere that you would desire to be part of one day. Because like I said, you're in the heart of Nashville. What better way to take in college football than downtown Music City? And I kind of see the vision more and more that I hear from Clark. And, not to be a complete homer about Vanderbilt football, because, I've gone to Vandy games growing up, never was a full-fledged fan, but I did want to see them succeed. And so I think this is the first step for them to continue to get to that path. And so, yeah, I mean, just even from that clip coming back, I can tell from the inflection and tone in his voice that he genuinely is excited to get started because they all know that if they're all in, anything can happen. That's what's beautiful about sports that I love is you can talk and talk like we do as talking heads. And we have this expectation and we want this and we want that. This year, the bowl level eligibility has to be the goal. He's talked about this since the very start. And so if it's that from the outset of your tenure as a head coach, you've got to get there in the first 5 years, I feel like, especially if it's a team that's been struggling. So, and what is bowl eligibility? 6 wins?
You need to be 500.
Right? Yeah. So, I mean, 6-7 wins. I don't know if that's too outlandish to give them. I would say at least 6 would be within reach this year, don't you think?
So I when I wrote down ceiling and floor, ceiling I put 6 and 6, and I won't go through their whole schedule.
Yeah.
Here are the 6 wins that I found. I don't think they will win all 6. If I had to make a record prediction, I don't think
Virginia Tech. No.
I won't go that far. Hokies are 14-point favorites in that one. I think Vandy can win at home against Alcorn State. That one should be a win. Has to be a win. We'll go with that. At Georgia State has to be a win.
Yeah.
It's never, no matter where you go, playing on the road is not easy, but that one has to be a win. Here are and Ball State.
Yeah.
They play
So you got
midseason.
3.
So those non-conference games, I think, have to be wins for Clark Lee. Your other non-con game is Virginia Tech. I think that's going to be a tough one. Maybe not. It's winnable,
Yeah,
I think.
But
I wouldn't
would
put
so.
it in one of the 6 spots that I think they can get. I think there are 3 SEC games I look at that I think Vandy could steal.
All right, let's hear them.
At Kentucky, sorry, Connor Newt.
I kind of like that pick.
I think it's possible. They did it 2 years ago, and Kentucky had Will Levis and Ray Davis.
Yeah.
No,
No, was it?
no. Ray Davis was on Vandy. That it was Rodriguez
Mm.
was their running back. At Auburn.
Yeah,
That's a tough place to go win.
I mean, hey, Tim Beck's familiar with it, you know.
I wrote at that was the shakiest one for me. But yeah, New Mexico State, they beat them last year, right?
Yes.
So Hugh Freeze, I don't know. That one was the shakiest one for me. And home against South Carolina. I think that is if Vandy is going to win one SEC game, I think it has to be that one. And then I think the other ones are a little bit more shaky. But I have a tough time seeing Vandy going to Missouri with all the talent they're bringing back and win, beating Alabama, Texas, or Tennessee at home, or going into Death Valley and beating LSU. I think those ones just seem hard to comprehend. But I think those 6 games that I mentioned, I think gettable.
They are gettable. And look, Diego, is it Pavia or
Pavia?
Pavia. Okay. I just want to make sure I say his name right. So Diego.
I could be wrong there too, actually.
But look, last year, Diego, I thought he played pretty well, you know, in Conference USA. I mean, look, that's where I came out of, and they were a recent ad, by the way, so that I had just missed them in terms of coverage, but that's okay. So last year for Diego, and he didn't play in every single game for what it's worth. He was 60% completion last year. Just for some context here, because this is who the Vols are, not the Vols, the Vanderbilt Commodores are getting. Wow, I've done that once or twice. But last year he had 26 touchdowns and 9 picks, but also against Auburn. I will say this was one of 2 games that he had 200 passing yards
and 3 touchdowns, no picks, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
Right?
Yeah, that is correct. Ding, ding, ding. There you go, Jake. So that was interesting, and that's a great pickup for them. And Clark was non-committal today. Obviously, it's pretty early still, but non-committal to Joe's question of, is he your clear number 1 guy, you would think?
Yeah, I think Nate Johnson, if I'm – I believe is the other one. He's a former 4-star recruit transferring from Utah.
Yeah.
Where no quarterbacks are allowed to play for Utah ever again because Cam Rising will play there for eternity. He's Cam Rising is his 7th year and apparently has another year of eligibility.
That's wild.
He said he's not going to take it, but anyway, off topic. But yes, Nate Johnson was behind Cam Rising at Utah. He comes over. And even if Pavia is the starter, which I expect, I think there will be sets for Nate Johnson because he is fast.
Yeah.
He is a runner. And I think they're going to have sets for him, whether Diego Pavia heads to the sideline or maybe both of them out there at the same time.
Right. And I think with a program that's least suspecting right now, you could definitely draw up packages with all kinds of players. That's what's beautiful about this program right now is you could really surprise teams. You know, Auburn could be a team that you surprise next year and surprise the conference as well, Jake. I mean, there's some great picks in here that I like.
And again, people could be laughing saying,
sure,
Vandy's going to go on the road and beat Auburn and Kentucky in the same year. Well, 2 years ago, would you have picked Vandy to beat Will Levis and Anthony Richardson in the same year, 2 first-round quarterbacks? But they did it. Sorry, Will Levis just outside the first round. But 2 first-round caliber quarterbacks. Vandy beat them both in the same year. I'm not saying it's possible. Those are the games that I see Vanderbilt. That is their path to 6-6 is those games, I would say.
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe you steal one against Virginia Tech or Missouri or Tennessee. I'm just kidding.
Nah, no,
I don't think so. I think Tennessee is good. We'll talk some Vols coming up in the next one. Floor, though, I think is 3-9.
Probably.
And if you go 3-9 and Clark Lee's in his
Ofer in the SEC.
Ofer in the SEC, your only wins are Alcorn State, Georgia State, and Ball State.
Yeah.
I think, sadly, as much as I like Clark Lee and he's a Vanderbilt guy, I think Candace would probably be left with no other choice.
Yeah, for sure. Also, to go on a little rant right here before we go to break. Look, how long has Jared been off, by the way? Real quick here.
Just a week.
3 out of the last 4 weeks, right? I think.
Yeah, he's taken his vacation to gear up for to charge up for football season.
Our text line's a beautiful place, but let me tell you, when you have the privilege of hearing people on our station that are typical, voices, and we have a privilege to be working here, you should be thankful that you have willing participants to fill in for Jared. We're having a fun time here, guys.
We are.
I'm not, beat up by this whatsoever. I can take it for sure. But hey, when someone's saying chlorophyll, borophyll, whatever. And hey, by the way, Murray State on top now. Hey, man, that's a great program. Shane, I want you to go shoes up, brother. Go play that new game and make them a rebuild project. That'd be a great one. But, it is what it is. But anyway, this is going to be a lot more diverse of a program. Jake and I have hit a lot today. And also, our SEC Media Day coverage brought to you by Volunteer Hose and Gasket has been going great today.
It's almost college football season.
Yeah.
A lot more college football news today
I know.
than Titans or even Preds is like dead off season right now. So, guys, training camp's a week away.
I know.
There will be plenty. We will drown
Yes.
Titans talk
Oh my
coming up
gosh.
over the next month or so
Yes.
as we gear up for the season. But we got SEC Media Days. We got College Football
Mhm.
25. Life is good here in the summer. It's almost college football season, and we're going to stick with the college football talk coming up next. We're going to go to the Vols. For all you Vols fans out there who are screaming at your radios, why are you talking so much about Vandy? We're going to talk Vols next. Talk about Tennessee, Nico Iamaleava, as Josh Heupel prepares to take the podium tomorrow morning. How high can the Vols go in 2024 with their 5-star quarterback finally at the helm? That's up next in hour number 3 of Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
All right, I'm here to tell you about Window Nation, folks. It is smoking hot outside this time of year, and if you have inefficient windows, that means high utility bills all year long. And as somebody that, may be looking at replacing some windows, now I know Window Nation's told me I have good windows, but I may need to replace some of them. I'm glad that I can do it with Window Nation. Why? Because Window Nation is a company that I trust. It's a company that I believe in. And again, they sell some of the most energy efficient windows you can buy, and they were recently ranked highest on Forbes' list of best window installers. So I don't know about anybody else, but when it comes to my home, when I look to change my windows, it will be Window Nation. And right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free, plus 0 down and no interest or payments for 2 years. Stop paying more than what you have to. Again, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free, 0 down, no interest or payments for 2 years. Schedule the in-home estimate today by calling 866-90Nation or visiting windownation.com. Once again, that is Window Nation at windownation.com.
Hour number 3, Stillman and Company here on this Monday afternoon. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser in for Jared as he continues to recharge for Titans training camp, which is now just 8 days away. Next Tuesday, players report. Can't wait. Going to be plenty of Titans coverage here on the station.
Oh, yeah.
Ian Safar behind the glass, doing a great job for us as the best producer in the land today.
Wait, but Connor is.
Depends on the day. Connor right now is the greatest head coach of Middle Tennessee State football in college football 25.
Nobody was playing as my Hilltoppers, apparently.
That's true. Yeah, he was playing some Western Kentucky. We had a texter on the text line saying he's bringing Vandy to the championship tonight. The Doors are taking the Natty back to West End. We can't wait to see it. I'm expecting we'll see plenty of national championship celebrations on Twitter from every type of school over the next couple of weeks. We just talked a lot of Vandy. Let's talk some Vols here. Tennessee going to the podium tomorrow. Josh Heupel trying to build on the last couple of years, 2 years ago with Hendon Hooker. Chance to make the college football playoff fell short after Hooker got injured and they lost to South Carolina on the road. Last year were good, but Joe Milton wasn't quite the quarterback they needed. Now they've got their 5-star guy, Nico Iamaleava, maybe one of the most hyped quarterbacks across the country coming into this season.
Yeah.
We were looking at the coverage here on the SEC Network earlier. They had SEC Heisman odds. Jalen Milroe and Nico Iamaleava have the same odds.
Isn't that weird to think about?
Like, I've heard a lot, like even Teron Davenport said to me a few weeks ago that he thought Jalen Milroe was a guy who could win the Heisman. He showed flashes, the 4th and 31 last year against Auburn.
Yeah.
Like, came up one play short of beating Michigan or extending that game against Michigan in the college football playoff. But Nico Iamaleava has the same odds as him for Heisman. Right. That is why I think Tennessee's season, they've got all the pieces around him. They've got experience almost everywhere. James Pierce is a premier edge rusher on the other side, possible number 1 pick in the draft. But if Nico isn't the guy that they expect him to be as a sophomore, this may not be quite as big of a year as Tennessee fans expect. Maybe it takes a year for him to get adjusted to playing in the SEC.
Yeah.
Because, again, he only played one game last year, one full game, and that was Iowa in their bowl game.
Yes, it was.
And he was great. He was great. But there's a difference between playing on a neutral site and going into, let me take a look at their schedule, going into Oklahoma and trying to beat the Sooners, or going to Georgia and trying to beat the number 1 team in the country in the Bulldogs. There's a big difference there. But I think it all hinges on Nico. Will the Vols get what they're expecting out of this high-profile quarterback? And if they do, in a 12-team playoff, I think there's a good chance they could sneak their way in there.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very versatile guy at quarterback. And so, I'm kind of glad to see that he did take the redshirt year because he's a redshirt freshman, Jake. So that is a unique spot to put yourself in as an up-and-coming, prospect for the league. So that is something that I want to see him take advantage of in the long stretch because, let's say he does have to develop a little bit. That's okay. And this year they do have the very big heightened expectations after last year. That was a very good Vols team. And I was excited to go and see them play. The more recent game I went to, I know it's been some time, I went to when Lane Kiffin got peppered by mustard. But that was such a fun environment to be around. And so if that is what you continue to see in Knoxville and Nico is thriving, man, what an I don't even know where I want to go with that. Just like it's the amount of hype is immeasurable to what I've ever seen there. And I was not around to see Peyton Manning thrive, but I'm not saying he would be like Peyton Manning, but the hype is there for it to be a huge, monstrous season for a guy that's not been a starter yet either.
And I think Tennessee fans, after 2 years where they've been good, for the first time in a while, Tennessee has been in the top. Was a favorite for the Heisman at one point. Like, Tennessee has gotten their way back to being relevant in the SEC. Now they're hoping to kick the door down, but that's a lot of responsibility to shoulder on a 19, 20-year-old kid.
Right. So that it will hinge on a lot of responsibility shifting toward Nico, but it's also with the pressure, I like the phrase pressure makes those diamonds. And so you have to hope that there is that talent that comes out from Nico. And I've seen some clips. I've seen him somewhat, from what the reporters have gathered around him in Knoxville. There's some great guys up there. And I've been able to, at least go back and see some of his high school things just because I was doing some of a deep dive on him to kind of get to know him a little bit more in depth. But I think for him this year, I want to see where he thrives early and often, Jake, because what would be the bar a little bit at a time here? Is the coaching staff telling him, let's hit the easier things as much as possible now, and then we'll hit those bigger plays as the season goes along? Or will he come out swinging? I don't know. But if he does come out swinging on a few big plays, I want to see that confidence grow to where he is one of the better guys that takes the confidence to the next level, because that could really separate the Vols from the rest of the conference for sure.
If Nico is who the Vols fans expect him to be, they could be really good. I mean, this Heupel offense has shown that if you're a guy who can deliver passes down the field with the spread that they've got, have you seen any of the screenshots from the new video game of Tennessee's playbook?
I have. Yeah.
It is hilarious because it's so accurate. They've got the guys like the 5 offensive linemen and the quarterback and the running back are all like just so far away from the wide receivers. Might as well be standing on the sideline. It is so funny how accurate it is. And I'm excited to play with it. I am, because it's a fun offense. They take shots. They run those screens where they spread the defense out, and you can run out of that too. Like, people say that Tennessee is a pass heavy offense, which I think they do pass more, but because you spread the defense out so much, you can run the ball effectively as well. James on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, does say the question for Tennessee is the defense.
Yes.
They have looked like Swiss cheese over the last couple of years, is what he says. And I think you're right. You look at, I mentioned the South Carolina game. That's the one that obviously stands out. You give up 63 points to Spencer Rattler
that was
and South Carolina, and your college football playoff hopes go down the drain. Can the defense the question is not, can the defense win you football games? Can the defense not lose you football games? Because I think this offense, as long as Nico isn't abysmal compared to where we think he is, which I don't think that's going to be the case.
No.
They're going to put up 35, 40 points per game.
Yeah, for sure. So it's just going to be a matter of adjustment for them. The Swiss cheese is a great analogy. I had a hard time watching them on defense last year. I always wondered, like, all right, how many points is it going to be this week?
It makes for exciting football, though.
They have they still have some talent on defense.
Well, they do. Like, again, I mentioned James Pierce.
Yeah,
like,
this James Pierce kid. I mean, he
could be the number 1 pick in the draft.
So, yeah, you can't complain too much.
No.
I mean, it's probably tough to play defense in that Heupel system.
Yes.
Considering
you're on the field so much.
1, 2, 3. If, by chance you go 3 and out. I mean, they talked about that in Chip Kelly when he was with the pros. And when he made it to the NFL, like, can a system like that work, and how much do you have to be on the field? And so I think that's a challenge for a defense when you're in an offensive system like Heupel.
Yes. Playing fast, so many big plays.
3 and out, and you're back on the field in a minute. Boom. Or like that, and you're right back out there.
That is true. It can be a back and forth game in Vols land sometimes, and maybe we'll see that again this year. But like we said, maybe the Vols have made strides on defense. I know they've brought in a few transfers, and obviously Pierce is the gem of that defensive side. We did it for Vandy. We're going to do it for the Vols too. Floor and ceiling. What do we expect from Tennessee as SEC Media Days roll along in Dallas? Josh Heupel and the Volunteers will be at the podium tomorrow morning. I believe it will be like 10 o'clock tomorrow. Let's see. Tuesday, 10:45 Central Time. Tennessee will be at the podium. Josh Heupel, center Cooper Mays, linebacker Keenan Peely, and defensive lineman Amari Thomas will be there. So Tennessee tomorrow morning. We'll have a reaction to that tomorrow as well. I'll be on with Adam Vingan from 2 to 6. But let's do floor and ceiling for Tennessee coming up next. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser in for Jared Stillman here on this Monday afternoon. Stillman Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Starting you off here on your Monday afternoon. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser, Ian Safar with you as Jared is on vacation. Talking some Tennessee Volunteers. SEC Media Days going on down in Dallas this week. We talked some Vandy earlier as Clark Lee was at the podium. Tomorrow, 10:45 Central Time, Josh Heupel will step to the podium and talk about his Tennessee Volunteers who are looking to take a big step in 2024. You can text or call us at 615-737-1025. Our text and phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'd love to hear from you. We do have a texter who wants to clarify. Tennessee was ranked 22nd in the country in scoring defense last year. He says, tell me you don't watch the games without telling me you don't watch the games. Hashtag Swiss cheese, referencing one of our previous texters.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I did not have the stats handy, but Tennessee, I'm sure that is also affected. Like, scoring defense in college is a little bit harder to give a reasonable comparison with than the NFL, because the NFL, they're all pro teams, but like you throw a couple cupcakes in there that you shut out or hold to 3 points per game, that,
Right.
that does bring the average down significantly. So, but that is a very good point. Top 25 in scoring defense.
Yep.
Tennessee's defense not nearly as bad as maybe.
I mean, I just pulled up the rankings. You had Toledo, Wisconsin, Utah, Florida State, Duke, Bama in front of you. I mean, you know, there's
most of those teams pretty good.
Yeah, there's some really good schools right in front of you. I mean, the average now altogether last season, I mean, the top 5 was a really, really dominant defenses in Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, and Georgia. Now, Iowa, you know, we briefly mentioned Iowa for a different reason, like 2
Iowa,
hours ago.
95 defense, 74 offense.
Yeah, so that's a commonality. But no, I mean, it is worth bringing up. It's not like they're a complete laughing stock on defense, but you have to hope that this year that those new additions at least help you bolster that. They did get a couple of guys from the portal. One that's interesting, they did get one from Middle Tennessee, by the way. Don't know too much about him. I'd have to look him up, but Jacoby Thomas from MTSU is joining them. He's a DB. And then you also have Jalen McMurray from Temple, Jeremy McCoy from Oregon State is joining them as well. And then on the D line, it's Jackson Moy from Stanford. So yeah, if you know who those guys are, those are the newest additions. Have to do a little bit more research on that. Just thought I'd throw the names out there because we wanted to mention what the expectations could be for the defense this coming season, but for the team more importantly, Jake. So do you want to start us off this time?
Yeah, let's start with ceiling.
Okay.
Instead of floor.
Okay.
Let's start with ceiling. What is the best we think the Vols can do? And again, I've said I think their season hinges on whether Nico Iamaleava can step in as an SEC starting quarterback as a sophomore and be the guy that Vols fans expect him to be, and be an upgrade from Joe Milton, I guess, is the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a given.
Yeah.
Well,
he'll be an upgrade from Joe Milton.
Joe Milton wasn't an awful quarterback. He wasn't great.
He was not very good.
He had a cannon for an arm, and he was a good runner. He just didn't know where the ball was going. That's I'm not saying Joe Milton was he was an SEC quarterback. I don't know if he was.
He has the
above
traits
average.
that, a lot of these guys like with the big arm and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, and that's why he got drafted.
And so, no, Nico will be a big upgrade.
Oh, I think so. But you're also taking a guy who had played a lot of college football before that to a guy who's only played one full game. I think Nico's way more talented. I'm not trying to say Joe Milton was held back or something at Tennessee. I think he held that team back last year for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think he was. If he was terrible, they wouldn't have gone 8-4, 9-3 last year, whatever they went.
9-4 last year.
9-4. This year, I think the ceiling for the Vols is 10-2. And I think that gets them into the college football playoff as the 7, 8, 9, 10 seed, somewhere in that range. Possibly hosting a college football playoff game in Neyland Stadium. How crazy would that be?
That would be pretty wild. So in the 3 years that Josh Heupel has been with the Vols, now they started last year 12th. The AP pre-rank was 12th.
Yes.
Mine just loaded up, so it took just a second here. But yeah, they started out 12th last year. The previous 2 years when Josh got started, they did not start out ranked, and they had to work their way up to the top. And I tend to agree with your sentiment with the 10-2, honestly. I think that would be a good place to start. I don't know if I want to go less than 10 because the aspirations for this team are significantly high.
I think that's the hope for Vols fans is that you're
Yeah.
10-2 and you're in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
Which, again, I don't want to come off as a Joe Milton apologist here. I think he held the Vols back significantly last year, and it's shown because Hendon Hooker took that team close to the college football playoff, and Joe Milton didn't get them anywhere close last year. So I think 10-2 is fair. That gets you in the college football playoff in the SEC, almost certainly. Looking at their schedule, I think the 3 games that are going to be the most challenging.
Obviously, Georgia's one.
At Georgia's, for sure. That's the hardest game on anybody's schedule this year is on the road against Georgia. Home against Alabama is always tough for Tennessee. There's a reason they've only won once against Alabama in who knows how long. And at Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma is going to be a pretty decent team this year.
I think so too.
Maybe not top of the SEC, but top half, I would guess. So I think those 3 games at Oklahoma, home against Alabama, at Georgia, I think it would be tough to imagine them winning 2 of those 3.
I think so. And, I don't know why, but something in my gut tells me, and I know that this could be significantly different, but obviously last year, Florida did beat Tennessee 29-16.
Yeah.
Not to say that this year is a right over where we just know that Tennessee is going to, kill them this year by whatever means. And look, I understand they would be favorites for sure.
And that game's in Knoxville, at least this year.
They're in Knoxville.
Swamp it's been a tough place to go for Tennessee.
Yeah. I mean, look, the last time they beat them, it was 2022, but they've not, beaten them in Knoxville since 2016. So it's been some time here. And historically, I don't see back-to-back wins against them since the early 2000s. That would be 03-04. So you've got that to look at as well. You've got to start something good. And those are good expectations, I feel like, Jake, because if this is a team that's rising above, I mean, Nico's clearly got to be the guy for them. And that was the one big thing for us last segment. If that doesn't work, then this team is going to be in dire straits, quite frankly. I mean, that's the way you have to read it.
And that's kind of where I went with the floor for Tennessee. If Nico isn't up to be a top-tier SEC quarterback as a sophomore, or if he gets injured, I think Tennessee would go 7-5. I think I think the floor is 7-5. I don't see them losing to Chattanooga, Kent State, Arkansas. I think is going to be really bad this year.
Yeah.
Kentucky at home, Mississippi State at home, UTEP, Vandy. I think that's 7 wins right there. The other 5, I think, are if things go wrong, you could lose at NC State, you could lose at Oklahoma, you could lose to Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. So I think floor is 7-5, ceiling's 10-2. That's kind of where I sit with the Vols this year.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll find out, I think, in due time what that's like for them. But also too, you mentioned, I'm not trying to put Nico away, but I don't even know who. I just looked at their roster. I really couldn't tell you too much about their quarterbacks. What if he does go down? Would there be somebody in your mind? I mean, they have a couple of guys that look like they've got a little bit of experience, but everybody looks to me like, hey, I don't know if I would trust this guy or not. I mean, Gaston Moore, I think
he's probably not.
Yeah,
I mean,
they put all their eggs in the Nico basket.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's probably par for the course for most teams.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're moving to your backup quarterback, you're
not going to the
knock the
playoff.
expectations down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe if you're lucky here and there's a team that could survive losing your starter, but not for a long period of time. I don't think so.
I agree. And most schools do this. You put all your eggs in your star quarterback, and Tennessee is doing that with Nico Iamaleava. I think it was Trevor Maddich who said he's the best fit for this Heupel system. Maybe it wasn't Trevor. I did see some college football guru experts say that he believes Nico fits in this Heupel offense better than anyone, including Hendon Hooker. So that's exciting for Vols fans. and we'll see how it works out.
I could see that.
Me too.
Hendon Hooker came out of nowhere.
Well, Hendon was at Tech, and Tech kind of threw him off to the curb, and
he was
like,
hurt and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so it was Heupel. It was kind of a reclamation project with Hendon Hooker, whereas Nico was hand selected.
Oh yeah,
to run this system for Josh Heupel. So Ricky on our text line says Florida's 9 wins. Florida is not good, nor is NC State. I don't know if there's a team in the country not named Georgia that I would say I'd set the floor at 9 wins.
Yeah.
This is still, you still have to play the games. Like, you can say Florida is not good, nor is NC State, but App State beat Michigan. Old Dominion has beaten Virginia Tech twice. Like, as a Hokie fan, I know that you can't write off games as wins completely before they're done. I think 7 to 8 wins I would put as the floor. 9, I think, is too high for almost any team out there not named Georgia, because injuries happen and weird things happen on the football field.
Sure. And that is a fair way to look at it for sure, Ricky. Now, like, could, a Mississippi State, give you some strife, and some Florida teams give you a strife this year? Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to run into stuff like that. And Kentucky's not ever an easy matchup either. We talked about how Arkansas might not be very good. You just never know how systems match up with each other. And I mean, you can do a really big deep dive into it. But then again, it's all about availability. It's all about the execution being dialed in. I mean, look, there's everything makes a difference. And we'll have to find out if this young quarterback is able to control this team the way that it's meant to be controlled, because all the quarterbacks so far that have come through it, Jake, they've all been juniors or older. So there is that as well.
Yeah, there's been the experience there. So we'll see. Tennessee, they open up their season against Chattanooga.
Yeah, the schedule's not overly tough.
It's not.
The way it breaks for them in their bye weeks, I think, works out pretty well.
And they, outside of Georgia, the last 5, and again, outside of the best team in the country on the road, the last 5 games are all, I would say, I would put those in the should be a win column. Home against Kentucky, Mississippi State, UTEP, Vandy.
Mm-hmm.
So you really...
I mean, you have some tough games, right? You got Arkansas, and then Florida. But after the Oklahoma game, you get the bye week.
Yeah, that stretch of 4 games.
And then Arkansas, Florida, Alabama, Kentucky. You have a bye week after the Alabama game. So,
do they play 4 straight SEC home games? Is that right? Florida, Alabama, Kentucky, Mississippi State.
Yep.
Yeah, they do.
They'll have a bye week in between.
So, man, they don't have to leave Knoxville for like 2 months almost.
Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah, a lot of October and not till halfway through November.
Wow.
They come back from Arkansas, and then they're there from October 12th. They don't have to go anywhere until Athens, Georgia, the week of November 16th.
The schedule works out well for the Vols.
Wow.
And then a road trip to Vandy. I mean, that's not really that's not really a road
2.5 hours down the road.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty much a home game anyways.
We will see. We will see. Again, opening up against Chattanooga August 31st in a new SEC. We're going to talk about that coming up next. Texas and Oklahoma are officially members of the SEC. I don't think the preseason poll has officially been released yet, but I did find one, and we're going to go through it coming up next. Jay Kleiman, Nick Keyser in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Back here on Stillman and Company, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. I'm Jake Lyman. Nick Keyser in studio with me, filling in for Jared Stillman today in Safar Behind the Glass. Talking a lot of college football today. SEC Media Days going on down in Dallas, Texas. We are 6 weeks away from week 1. Less than that, week 0, we're going to have a few games. And College Football 25 was released today.
We've been getting several text messages about several games that have already happened.
Yes, getting lots of texts about the thousands to hundreds of thousands of college football games being played across the country right now after early access started to College Football 25 today. And the SEC might be video game-like this year.
I know.
You used to only be able to change conference alignments in NCAA football. Now they do it in real life. Oklahoma and Texas are officially members of the SEC. Nick, is going to look a lot different. And Texas isn't coming in here as the Texas that was down for the better part of, the early 2010s and maybe even all of the 2010s. They're coming in as a team that was a couple plays away from a national championship game last year. And Oklahoma is on the rise as well.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how one Arch Manning kind of does too, if he ever gets the opportunity.
Well, yeah, Quinn Ewers has him boxed out right now.
I don't envision him really getting much of anything this year for sure, but it is kind of interesting to see the dynamic that's there. He's in the game, by the way, too. That was a late development, but
87 overall for
Isn't
Arch
that
Manning,
strange?
a guy who has never played
yeah,
he hasn't played a single snap of college football,
No.
I don't believe.
nothing.
Maybe
No.
he snuck in there at some point last year.
But regardless, it is an interesting perspective. I know that Nick Saban had some interesting comments around this as well. But I mean, for me at least, it's weird to think going back as when you and I were growing up, this was a much smaller conference even then. And it felt more exclusive and it felt more regional at that point in time too.
Well, Greg Sankey even came out today and said that our conference name is the only one that still means something, which technically, yes, like if you drew a border around the SEC, it would be in the southeast quadrant of the country. But like, is Missouri really the southeast? Are Oklahoma and Texas really the southeast? Like, I understand they're expanding and you have to keep up, but it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Like the Big Ten, I get there's 16 teams. I guess that's what he was saying there. The ACC is completely messed up now. Unless they change it to the All Coast Conference or something like that. Because they got Stanford and Cal.
It's basically every conference outside of the SEC looks like it's in shambles. Like even Conference USA from where I was.
All over the place.
I keep going back to it. It's the same thing. New Mexico is one of those schools.
It makes sense. They are Conference USA. All across the country.
Yeah, and that wasn't the vision whatsoever, but that's okay. But also Greg, too, kind of pointed out, in the same breath that I heard Willie and Derek talking about, prior to us was he's like, I'm not actively recruiting, yes, you're not but all the, previous commissioners, they go from 10 to 12, like you just keep going up and up and up. So,
they've been talking about how the SEC doesn't even want Clemson and Florida State. Who would fit in better in the SEC regionally, at least, than I guess they would bring over what? Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and
well, you got to go all the way to 20.
Yeah, if you go to 20, Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina.
Maybe
that would be my 4 probably.
Man, North Carolina out of the ACC, huh?
I mean, who would be the 4th one? Like Clemson, Florida State, Miami would be locks, I think. Just because
is Georgia Tech that bad?
I couldn't.
I don't think the SEC would really want.
I don't think they'd want. I don't even think Georgia Tech would fit all that much because Georgia Tech fits the ACC, like more academically inclined.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of what's closer to Nashville a little
Virginia
bit.
Tech.
I don't know.
I'm just kidding.
You wish.
NC State, maybe? Would that be good? They've been really good in everything lately.
It's possible.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Who knows if they end up doing that? But right now, they're at 16. You alluded to those Nick Saban comments, Nick. Nick Saban had some nice greetings for the newest member of the SEC, Texas. Here's what he had to say.
That's always the challenge in the SEC. You know, what kind of tickles me is all these people asking these questions about how Texas always ran the conference they were in. They're not going to run the SEC. There's a whole lot of arrogant people in a lot of places in the SEC, so they can forget all about that. They'll be a good team and a great program, and Sark will do a great job, but that's not going to be a problem.
I love Nick Saban just coming out of his shell completely now that he's on TV. Texas ain't going to run the SEC, Nick Saban says. There's plenty of arrogant people across the conference in places like Athens, Georgia, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Oxford, Mississippi, that are going to do – I think Texas is going to get everybody's best shot this year to try and make sure they get a nice welcome to the SEC moment.
I was about to say that too. I was like, most rookies are like, what's your welcome to the
NFL?
Yeah. Like, what's your moment? It's going to be like, what games were your welcome to the SEC moments this year,
Well, Texas being projected to be towards the top of the SEC in their first year. I mentioned, I don't think the full media preseason poll is out yet.
I don't think so.
I thought it was going to come out today because I thought it came out on the first day of media days. Maybe it comes out later on in the week. But I did find one from 247 Sports that spells out kind of where everybody fits heading into this season. And I actually think it's split up pretty perfectly into 4 quadrants.
So do you want to run through this next?
Let's run through it next.
Okay.
Let's take a break here. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser in for Jared Stillman today, talking some college football on your Monday afternoon. Stillman Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Wrapping up hour number 3 here on Stillman and Company on your Monday drive home. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser, Ian Safar with you. Talking SEC football. SEC Media Days rolling along all week down in Dallas, Texas, as we get set for the 2024 college football season. You can chime in as well on our text and phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. A couple of texts here on our text line. Cody from Jolton, we were talking about possible expansion for the SEC. Who would be the 4 teams from the ACC? We kind of agreed Clemson, Florida State, Miami are the logical ones. He brought up Louisville, and I think that's one that I hadn't thought of, but it makes sense. Yeah. They've been a lot better in football lately. Adds to basketball most years. They were not good last year, as Jared has bemoaned on this program. And it's a local rivalry for Kentucky.
Yeah.
I think that is a good point there from Cody. And Chris in Nashville making a point here that he says Ian and Nick sound very similar over the radio. He said sometimes it's hard to tell who's talking.
Our laughs are very
okay. Interesting.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
You guys need to imitate each other now and try and mix up the viewers. We'll have Ian just play Nick for a whole segment.
I guess.
See what works. We're talking SEC football, SEC Media Days all week long. I have not seen the official SEC preseason poll, but 247 Sports released their own.
Yes.
They had 16 people vote, and I actually think you can debate within the tiers who needs to be 6 versus 7 and 10 versus 11, but I think the tiers look pretty good to me. Here's how it went. Georgia was unanimous number 1, obviously. Texas was 2. Alabama and Ole Miss were tied for 3rd. I have labeled that top 4 as likely playoff teams.
Okay.
Because I think the SEC gets 4.
Yeah.
If it's not a down year, I think 4 SEC teams are going to make the playoffs.
Could it be more?
It could be more. I think there's, well, let me think about automatic qualifiers.
Yeah.
So you're going to get 1 from the Big 12, 1 from the ACC, 1 from the Group of 5 guaranteed. So that's 3. That leaves 9 open spots.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance you could maybe get 5 SEC teams if there's a really good year.
That's what I was kind of thinking.
And then 3 Big 10, 2 ACC or Big 12, possibly.
Right.
Maybe even 5 SEC and 4 Big 10.
I could see that.
So I would say those are your likely playoff contenders. We'll say Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss. Then your second tier, Tennessee at 5, Missouri at 6, LSU 7, Oklahoma 8. I think those are your possible playoff teams. Would I put them in there today, heading into the season? No. Would I be surprised if they're in the top 12 at the end of the year? I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But these rankings, I looked up the same thing that you've got up for our conversation here currently. And I do find some of these selections to be very intriguing. I don't know where you want to start for a minimum for going. Do we want to do top 10 out of these 16? Because it's a long list.
Yeah, I just going through the tiers here. The next one, A&M, Auburn, Kentucky, Florida. I think those are not college football caliber playoff, but those are competitive SEC teams. And then at the bottom, South Carolina, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt. I think those are probably, they're not going to compete with the top half of the league. But looking at this, the 2 that I look at, Tennessee and Missouri.
Yeah, that's where I was kind of drawn to looking at the list too. Missouri is 6, Tennessee at 7.
Tennessee at 5.
Oh, maybe it is a different.
Is it 247?
Yeah, this is 247.
This one that I had Tennessee 5, Missouri 6, LSU 7.
We're figuring this out on the air. This was also my bad. I found a January 17th one.
There you go. Yeah, this one was from today. Tennessee 5, Missouri 6, LSU 7. That grouping right there, another bold prediction for Jake. I had one earlier that Will Levis was going to be at least honorable mention next year on these ESPN top 10. Bold prediction, one of Tennessee, Missouri, or LSU will be in the college football playoff.
Ooh, interesting. Really? You think so?
I think so. I think those 3 teams are sneaky, especially Missouri. Missouri might have...
Maybe, yeah.
Stay with me here. Missouri definitely has the best wide receiver in the conference in Luther Burden. And Brady Cook coming back is one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the SEC, I would say.
Yeah, he's not anything to wink an eye at.
I think maybe not 3-5. It's tough. Like Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe for those top 4 teams. That's tough. And then you got Nico. But I think Brady Cook would be next.
Yeah.
Right?
I would say so. But yeah, because Cook is I've enjoyed watching him at quarterback, and I think he could be a pretty reliable guy in the conference, Jake. That's just where I would lean with it. But
he's got a stud. Like Luther Burden is going to be top 10 pick next year in the NFL draft.
He's unreal. Yeah, for sure. So, but yeah, we've got our tiers broken up here. But yeah, I've got the actual list now. So
there you go.
I fagoofed there. So, but that's all right. I do find it interesting they have a tie for third, but
And I kind of like it because I don't really know where to split Alabama and Ole Miss to. I think you need to see what Kalen DeBoer does. I need a few games of non-Nick Saban Alabama to make a judgment.
They have cupcakes too. Bama does that every year.
Well, yeah, and everybody does. Everybody throws at least one cupcake on the schedule.
I feel
if you didn't, you're not being smart.
That's true, but I felt like Bama, with them and the reputation, some schools I feel like they should just have a few, like 2 or something.
Let me
I don't know.
Alabama, speaking of cupcakes, they open with your Hilltoppers.
They do. I'm well aware of who they play. Don't get me wrong.
They do play at Wisconsin.
Yeah, they do.
Which gets some jump around in there in the third quarter. Wisconsin's a tough Camp Randall. That's a tough place to go play. There are other non-conference games. South Florida at home, who gave them trouble last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, they did. At halftime, I think they were losing.
Yes. And then the classic that everybody comes back for every year, November 16th in Tuscaloosa, the Mercer Bears make a trip to Titletown to get beat 57-0. I mean, isn't that the cupcake that everybody uses as an example? Like, it's not Mercer versus Alabama when you're talking about like a lopsided matchup. So I'm excited to see Alabama under Kalen DeBoer because, I mean, really, I don't really remember in Alabama before Nick Saban.
I don't either, really, to be honest with you.
So this will be the first look that we get of, hey, is it Alabama or was it Nick Saban? Which I think a lot of it was Nick Saban, but can you bring in another talented coach and keep that same trajectory? Ole Miss is going to be good. Jackson Dart and Lane Kiffin's brought in a lot of good transfers there as well. But again, that tier of Tennessee, Missouri, LSU, I won't put Oklahoma in there, but I think one of those 3 teams makes the playoff. And if I had to pick one, I'm going with the Missouri Tigers. I really am. I am high on Missouri this year and what's going on in Como.
Okay. Well, I'll have to think more about that. That's a good question. I'll have to think on that. Maybe get with our squad when we talk about this, because this would be a good topic with them too. But
that is true.
I'll have to think more about that for sure, just because I want to learn a little bit more about the rankings, do a little bit more of a deep dive. I usually have been taking a break from as in-depth research for sure, but I would say this is an interesting perspective. And could you tell me the other schools that you think could possibly make it? You said it would be Missouri and who else?
Missouri, Tennessee, LSU. I said one of those 3 will be playing in the college football playoff this year. Maybe not as bold as I'm thinking it is, but
I don't know. LSU feels bold to me.
They did lose a lot. Yeah. They lost their top 2 receivers, their quarterback, their Heisman quarterback.
Yeah.
But the LSU, whatever sport it is, they just draw talent like nobody else to Baton Rouge. So I have doubts about LSU, but I think one of those 3 is in the college football playoff. I do want to mention before we take a break here that October 12th is setting up to be one of the best football days of the year. And I was invited to a wedding on October 12th.
No.
So if you want to chime on your text line, just give me advice. Like, what should I do? And I'll list the games. Tennessee, Washington, Iowa, Ohio, Oregon, Penn State, USC. Let's see.
Conference game, Penn State, USC.
Penn State, USC, Big Ten conference game. Yes. South Carolina, Alabama. I can live without that. Red River rivalry, Texas, Oklahoma, And
SEC version.
yes, SEC version. And there's one more that I'm missing.
Is it? No,
I don't know. I must have missed it. Anyway, that's enough to say it right there. It's I don't know. It's one. I was invited to a wedding. I kind of want to go, but I'm also like, I'm going to miss so much football. This is why you don't schedule fall weddings, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly right.
No fall weddings. I've already told my girlfriend that when we get married, I'm not doing a fall wedding because I don't want the people coming to have to make this choice because I would assume that they'd choose to come to the wedding,
or have that table that's just surrounded by the tablet or the phone.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, they're the table that's watching the game.
They've got Penn State USC on. Yep. Let's go over there. I don't know.
Is it about the attendees at the wedding or is it about you, Jake?
It's not about me. It's about the attendees at the wedding. I can live without it. It's my wedding day. Like I understand, but I don't want my cousins who are big college football fans to feel like they're missing out by coming to my wedding. I want them to be excited to come to my wedding and not disappointed that they're missing college football.
Yeah. And I can tell you from experience,
yes,
too,
you did great.
That's what I wanted. It was right at the beginning of the off season for me, obviously covering hockey, but I was like, this is the most ideal time because no important games are going on. What am I going to miss? Nashville SC. I go to the games.
Exactly.
I'm not missing anything big in town.
Yes.
Like if it's like a big race or something, like no offense, Chase, I don't care about NASCAR or any big race in town. Like there are other more important things you can put on during the entirety of the summer. And so I wouldn't even like, I'm gonna be honest. I don't like going to fall weddings because of that most of the time.
Yes. It's nothing to do with the bride and groom. Like I want to go, but it just makes me disappointed that I'm missing out on such great games.
Yeah.
So spring and summer weddings, everybody. Let's keep it that in my campaign for president, that is the first thing on the top of my campaign is no fall weddings. We will ban weddings from Labor Day until Christmas.
Yeah, I think that would be a good one.
Does that sound good? I like
maybe a bit extreme, but it's a start.
We can workshop it.
You have to campaign on something.
Yes, exactly. There's my platform right there. If you have thoughts on this, chime in on our text line, 615-737-1025. You can call as well. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll transition back to the NFL coming back here. Let's talk some Titans. Training camp's 8 days away. Let's talk about some of the biggest questions that we have that we hope will be answered next week when the Titans report. That's up next here on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Final hour on this Monday evening. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3. The Game. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser in for Jared Stillman today. We've been having some fun talking college football. It's been a big day for college football. The new video game was released at 3 Central Time to the early access folks. I am one of which I will be hurrying home in about an hour.
Please call or text us 615-737-1025. Give us a good reaction to your experience so far with the game. I really want to hear from some people on this, Jake.
Yeah, if you're playing and listening right now, shoot us a text.
Or if you've played already, because I've seen pictures of people being scored on already. You've even shown
I showed
me
you
one.
a video of an offensive lineman taking a fumble 65 yards for a touchdown. So realistic stuff going on in the video game.
Yes.
Also, SEC Media Days going on. We'll have coverage all week here on The Game, presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. We were just talking about no fall weddings because they get involved with there's conflict with college football.
Yeah.
And on
Just
our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, Matthew in Nashville says, no spring weddings either. His cousin had one back in February. It was the same day as Tennessee, Kentucky, and UNC Duke in basketball. There have to be weddings sometime, Matthew.
Yeah.
I would take that over what I just listed out for October 12th for football.
Okay, what if...
But we could say no weddings from Labor Day to Memorial Day. Is that extreme? Is that too extreme?
That's a little extreme, I would say.
We have like a mating season.
There's not enough venues, I don't think, that can hold everybody for the mad dash.
Just everybody who's getting married can go to Vegas on one day out of the year, and we'll just knock them out like a factory, a production line.
Yeah, like a press and roll, go to like City Hall and then just like have your slip ready. It's signed. You go in, husband and wife.
Yeah,
bam,
say we'll make it today, July 15th every year. You go in to your City Hall and you can get married.
Yep.
No more weddings. Period. I'm just kidding, by the way.
Yes.
Anyway, let's get back to some Titans talk.
Yeah,
we've done a lot of college football today, which is distracting from. Again, we are a week away from training camp. I can't believe it because usually I feel like the NFL offseason takes forever, but it snuck up on me this year. Like the Ravens are already reporting today. Lamar showed up today for Ravens training camp. So we are officially back to training camp in the NFL. Titans report next Tuesday, July 23rd.
Yep.
Let's talk about some of our biggest questions that we hope to have answered.
Yes.
If not next week in training camp, throughout training camp. I'll start here with this one, Nick, and I think this is a big one for a lot of Titans fans out there. My biggest question is availability of some of your biggest question marks heading into the year.
Let me guess. Sweat, Snead, Jamal Adams.
Sweat and Snead, yes. NPF was the other one that I had written down.
Also known as
PT.
There we go. We got it in. We got it in.
I like trying to get that in if I'm ever hanging out with Ian. So
those are my three that I really, really hope we get a text or a tweet from like Teron Davenport whenever the first day of practice is. The first day of practice won't be. We actually have the schedule, don't we?
Okay, so we have the schedule, but I'm making sure that they have put it out.
Gotcha. We won't say anything yet then, but they report on Tuesday. I would assume the first practice probably isn't until Thursday.
Maybe Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, somewhere in there. I really hope we see a tweet from Teron Davenport that Sweat, Snead, and NPF are out on the field practicing.
Yes.
Especially Sweat. Ian, I know we talked about this with Adam a few weeks ago because whenever that first practice is, if there's a tweet from Teron Davenport saying absent at practice, Tavondre Sweat, 4 hours of Tavondre Sweat talk on these airwaves from 2 to 6.
We don't need that.
We do not need that. We need to see Tavondre Sweat out there and getting better and playing with his fellow defensive linemen, playing next to Jeffrey Simmons. That's my biggest question, I think, heading into training camp is, are those three guys, two of which you invested a lot in this offseason, are they going to be out there and full go for training camp next week?
Yeah, exactly. Those are great questions to lead off with. And I'll share this with you. I'm letting everybody know that I'm going to let you see the schedule now. But I am looking forward. I looked over that just for myself mentally. For note as well, as a reminder, because Jake and I talked about Jamal Adams. He will be seeing his former team in the Seattle Seahawks for joint practices. So that will be something to keep an eye on as well. I think as for my biggest question with the Titans, and I agree with you for sure with yours, but I think on my end, it's going to be who in the wide receiver core has the most chemistry with the quarterbacks. I I think this team struggled at OTAs on offense, and I get it. It's OTAs. I understand that. It's not the make or break. I get it. But I would like to hear at least, and maybe see, I don't know if I'm going yet or not. I may end up, going at some point because I'd like to know this team better. But can Calvin Ridley, can Traylon Burks, more importantly, there are some interesting lines with, Traylon Burks, NWI, and could one of the guys depth wise, make a case to stick around, maybe practice squad? I don't know, but Jaquan Jackson is a name that I felt like the Titans would probably keep around. I don't know if we're going to get to see like a Keiris Jackson stick around or a Trayshawn Harrison stick around. Like, I get it. We know some of these names, right? But it's going to be the receiving core for me is a big storyline that I want to pay close attention to at training camp, Jake, because is it going to mesh well with the offense? That's what I want to see. And I think I want to throw in Chig in there a little bit too, because he's not a wide out, but I want to see how well he's used too. So
I'm right with you. I think day one of training camp, I want to know who's available, but throughout training camp, I want to see who is Levis building the most trust with.
Absolutely.
And I think part of that may be familiarity.
Mm-hmm.
He's played a full year with DeAndre Hopkins, Nick Westbrook-Akina, Chig, Burks, not a full year, half a year.
Sure.
But you're bringing in these guys. Calvin Ridley has a PhD in route running.
Yeah.
And Tyler Boyd has played in this system before and is known as a very reliable slot receiver who can be your safety blanket in that slot spot. So who is going to be the guy that Levis leans on when we head into training camp? And I know training camp isn't the end all be all, because remember last year when we were getting all the reports that Traylon Burks is lighting up training camp, and man, him and Tannehill have such a great connection.
Didn't need his inhaler anymore.
And then he had 16 catches the whole year. So
yeah,
training camp, what you see out of there and all of the reports when they do 7-on-7 and team drills, and you see these flurry of tweets of here's what happened on this time down the field and this set of downs and all that stuff. Take it with a grain of salt. It's still training camp, but I do want to see who Levis is building the most trust with heading into the season in a new offense.
Yeah. One other really small thing that could be a big thing for this team too. And I get it. Some guys are used in different spots to see where they go depth wise, but also keep in mind, this is something that I know you and I have talked about briefly with our show, is depth at center. I get it. Lloyd Cushenberry is a reliable guy, but one other guy that took some reps at center last year was Daniel Brunskill. So,
well, yeah, and he said that he was repping at center in OTAs because they didn't have anybody else who had played center.
So is he going to be open to the idea of, if he made the team,
is he the backup center?
Right. Is he going to be that? And then does somebody at guard actually step up or not? I don't know. We'll find out.
Lots to look for in training camp next week as the Titans get out on the field on sometime mid next week. They report on Tuesday, and we'll get to hear from Brian Callahan and others.
Yeah.
Should be some fun. I can't believe it. We are, first
7 days away, basically, from anything good happening.
First preseason game is August 10th. So we are 26 days away from seeing the Titans on a real life football field playing.
Hallelujah.
Not a meaningful game, but a game.
Yes.
Again, we can't wait for it. Plenty of Titans talk, plenty of Titans coverage throughout training camp here on the station. We'll keep talking NFL when we come back. I'm going to, on the fly here, do we want to make our division picks coming up
make
next.
some.
I think we've got our time.
Yeah,
Let's-
absolutely.
Heading into training camp, teams are reporting. Let's make our picks for who's going to win each division. That's up next here on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
But folks, you can put this wide receiver room up against a ton of wide receiver rooms and it holds up as one of the best. Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd. And then the running backs, Tajay Spears, who we all know was taking some reps from Derrick Henry, and Tony Pollard. And then the offensive line is going to be coached by Bill Callahan, the new coach's dad, one of the best at it. Jeffrey Simmons is a very prideful individual who came in this studio, says he's going to bring the heat and the noise. They also got L'Jarius Sneed in the offseason. And last Friday, we didn't talk about it. They picked up Jamal Adams, the Prez, who I think has got a chip on his shoulder to prove that he still has it. Don't sleep on the Tennessee Titans, folks. Everybody keeps calling into this show to play the win-loss game, and when their team is playing the Tennessee Titans, they give their team a W.
Disrespect.
The disrespect is real.
That was Rich Eisen on his show talking about the Titans, listed them as one of his 5 teams that he believes could go worst to first in their division, which there's only 8 of them. So I don't know how exclusive that club is, but talking about the disrespect, everybody calling in, going through their team schedule, writes the Titans off as a win for their squad. Could the Titans go worst to first? He lists out all of the different moves they made, the talent that's on this team. We're going to talk about it now. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser in for Jared Stillman today here on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. So, can the Titans go worst to first? I believe at least one team has done it for each of the last 10 years, 15 years.
I think we talked about this a little bit last week.
Yeah.
I want to say it was 19 out of the past 21 seasons.
Yeah. So one of the 8 were last place teams goes and wins their division the next year 80 to 90% of the time. So it's very likely it's going to happen. Now, there are some teams that you would point to immediately and say, that would be the one that I think of. The Bengals and Chargers both finished last in their division last year. So those are 2 teams that I think stand out. Maybe the Bears, bringing in Caleb Williams and adding Keenan Allen and some other pieces there. But could the Titans be the team or one of the teams to do it? We're going to pick all the divisions, but let's start with the AFC South. Nick Keiser, do you think the Titans can do it, or are you a little skeptical?
I don't think they win the conference for sure. Or I'm sorry, this division. I don't agree with that sentiment. I still think the Texans come out on top. I mean, could I see the Titans finishing second? Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. But I wholeheartedly still think the Texans have the sauce, and they definitely proved this offseason that they mean business as well.
I'm taking the Titans.
You don't. Okay.
I'm going. Bold take Jake today on the program.
I know you're just all over the place.
I'm going
not Friday yet.
It's not. It's not Fireball Hot Take Friday yet. But I'm going Titans. The Texans, I think, are going to take a slight step back. I don't believe Stephon Diggs is as big of an acquisition.
I don't think he is either, but they still have talent.
No, they have a ton of talent, but they're playing a harder schedule. They're playing
Yeah.
a first place schedule. Titans are playing a last place schedule. I'm taking the Titans.
Okay.
I would say it's half homer and half just thinking that the Titans are going to take a step forward because I believe Will Levis is going to take a step forward. And I do think Texans would be my second team. I think those 2 teams and then the Jaguars and Colts I would put.
Sure.
I'm not a huge fan of the Jags roster construction.
Nobody knows what they are.
And I'm not a huge fan of Anthony Richardson.
No.
He's being anointed as this breakout star, a guy who could take a huge step. He played 4 games last year.
He is an athletic freak. I was listening to Quentin Nelson's interview with Bussin, and I thought he was impressive, but hearing about Anthony Richardson, it changed my perspective of him a little bit because it's someone else that's established that knows what he's looking for. Now, it's his teammate. I get that, but it is interesting to hear, even though it's different people talking about Richardson, you are hearing the same things constantly. So, but hey, in due time, they'll get the time to shine. So
you're going Texans in the South.
Yep.
I'm being a homer, and I'm taking the Titans. Let's go quickly through the rest of the AFC.
Let's do it.
AFC East, very crowded division. I would say the Patriots are probably the only team that doesn't have playoff aspirations. I'm sure they have aspirations, but they're not going to reach them.
Yeah, no worse the first here.
Who do you got in the East?
Give me the Miami Dolphins.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't always like Tua. I know Jared loves Tua. But I feel better about this team after last year. They kind of came on the scene last year a little bit. I know that finishing 11-6, I thought they looked better than Buffalo most of the time, Jake.
Yeah, and up until the Titans come back, they
Yeah.
were in the driver's seat to win that division. I could see it. There's plenty of talent on that team, and when you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on the field, it can make any quarterback look a lot better.
I have a guess of where you're going, but I want to hear it.
I'm going with the New York Jets.
I knew it.
I think old man Aaron Rodgers has something to prove.
Is he going to get Devontae?
Honestly, based on, have you watched the receivers on Netflix? Devontae Adams does not look happy there. And I mean, if the Jets are going to go for it with Aaron Rodgers, it has to be now. Can you guarantee that Aaron Rodgers is going to play football next season? I don't think you can. So I'm going to say the Jets go all in. I'm not going to say they get Devontae Adams definitively, but I think the Jets win that division. I don't know how much further they go. I don't know in the playoffs if Aaron's going to be able to match up with Patrick Mahomes
Yeah.
or Joe Burrow.
Sure.
But as I spoil my next 2 picks, let's do AFC West. I'm going Chiefs. Are you going Chiefs?
I'm going Chiefs.
I thought about the Chargers. I think the Chargers will be a playoff team, but you can't pick against the back-to-back defending Super Bowl champs.
No.
And I'm going to go Bengals in the North.
I am going Bengals as well. That's also a worst to first.
Yes.
You know, because
so
they are 9-8. So from last year, big difference in that team. I feel like this year, even though they lost pieces, I feel like there's some improvement. Joe Burrow is healthy now, so
fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, right? So how can they, do better with the personnel that they have, and how does Jamar handle T this year? And T does have T because he is playing on the franchise tag and is going to free agency next year.
That is true. Contract year. He's got to prove it for sure, because if he has a down year or gets injured, that contract's going to start to shrink.
Yep.
So in the AFC, I'm going Titans, Jets, Chiefs, Bengals. You are going Texans, Dolphins, Chiefs, Bengals.
Yep.
NFC. Let's start in the East.
Let's do it.
That's it. This is a weird one. I want to hear what you're going with first before I make my pick.
There's no worse to first here, even though I do think Washington improves. I think their ceiling would be second.
I did write down sneaky Commanders, but they are not my pick.
They're not my pick either. I could see them as their ceiling being second. I really think the Eagles do win this one.
I'm with you.
I tend to lean more that way than I do with Dallas. Dallas is always a pick I go to, but not this time.
I just think Dallas, like Jerry Jones came out and said, we're going all in this year.
I wonder if there's just too much drama around the Dak thing.
I think so too.
He's wearing a boot too lately, which is really strange.
It's funny. They did nothing this offseason.
Yeah.
Did they? Like, I can't think of.
No, they spent the least amount of money.
They brought Zeke back.
Yes, they brought Ezekiel Elliott back. Super Bowl, here we come.
But I think Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, and Dak are all fighting for a contract.
Yes,
they're all up for contracts. Like, I don't know what Jerry Jones was thinking with it. I guess you don't control when you have all your good players up for contracts, but it's tough. So we're both going Eagles there.
Yep.
I think Commanders and Cowboys will be playoff contenders, we'll say.
Yeah.
In the West.
Jumping down. Okay.
I'm gonna go with the easy one. I think the 49ers still control that division.
I think so too. 12-5. That's hard to not, at least try to replicate. They're a pretty powerful team. And then also, I just don't have much faith in Seattle or Arizona. I think Arizona improves.
I agree.
But not by much.
I think Seattle takes a step back. I think Arizona takes a step forward, but not playoffs quite yet.
No.
Rams will be in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
North, where are you going?
Ooh, this is the more difficult.
This was the toughest one for me, I think.
Yeah, this one's typically pretty difficult. I feel like you're going to pick Chicago.
I'm not. Actually.
You're not going Chicago?
No.
Oh.
I do like the Bears' outlook this year.
Robbie Stanley's Packers are the most attractive team to me here. And I feel like that's where I've got to go with it, because Jordan Love looked so damn good. Like, I saw the receiver part in that series. His footwork is insane. It's so drastically different than a guy like Justin Fields. He sets himself apart. He's only going to get better in this league, and he's proving why too.
I do like the Packers. I really do. And I almost picked them, but Detroit, I just feel like Jared Goff has figured it out.
You think so?
Up in Detroit, and he's got good weapons around him. I'm blanking on Jameson Williams. I think Jameson Williams is going to be better this year now that
they have Amon-Ra.
And obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown is a star in this league. Defense should be better. The Lions got so close to going to the Super Bowl last year. And I do think there could be a little letdown from that. They were up 21 points in that NFC Championship game on the road and lost. I think there will be some letdown from that, but I think they're still going to do enough to win the NFC North.
I think so.
We'll wrap things up with definitely not the best division in the NFC, but maybe the most competitive division in the NFC.
Probably.
Because I think you can make an argument for 3 of the 4 teams. I'm not there on Carolina. NFC South. Where are you headed?
I'm going to Atlanta. I have a weird feeling that Atlanta will win this one. and I think it's close. I think this is another close one. I think, Jake. It's difficult.
I didn't even write one down on this one because I'm between Falcons and Bucks.
Really?
I like Baker Mayfield. I think he's found something down there. It like kind of Jared Goff like both former number 1 overall picks needed a change of scenery, and they've kind of found a career resurgence.
It's not the same thing to me. I'm sorry, Jake.
I'm going to go with the Falcons. I'll go with you just because I think with a new offensive coordinator and you have all those weapons and now you've got the quarterback with Kirk Cousins, I will go Falcons.
Why does it feel like a win-win for me? Because even if there's a big injury to Kirk, you still have a rookie that you could lean on possibly.
So, and it's not like Penix is a super young guy, which made their pick strange, but
I think he's their third quarterback. I think they even have Heineke still there, maybe.
Is he? Yeah, you might be right.
I think so.
I'd have to double check, but
so we're pretty much in lockstep on the NFC there.
Both in Atlanta, it is Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix, Taylor Heineke, and John Paddock.
Yeah, so Heineke is there.
Probably technically their backup.
So maybe Penix is that third quarterback for them this year, and they kind of just give him a full redshirt year. That could be interesting. 3 of the 4, we were the same on the NFC. Eagles, 49ers, Falcons. You're going Packers. I'm going Lions in the North. So those are our still way too early, but open of training camp NFC division picks here on Stillman Company. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser in for Jared today. 30 minutes left in the program on this Monday evening, and we've got the Home Run Derby. An hour and a half away. Always one of the more fun events of the summer. The day before the All-Star game, guys just go out there and swing out of their shoes. It's the best. New format this year as well. We're going to talk Home Run Derby and how it stacks up with some of the other meaningless All-Star events that go on around sports. Coming up next. Again, 30 minutes left in the show. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser in for Jared here on Stillman Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company. Jared's still on vacation. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser in for him this afternoon. We've had a fun show. Lots of Titans talk, lots of college football. SEC Media Days going on down in Dallas. And the biggest move of the day, or biggest news of the day, College Football 25 has been released. Rejoice, all college football fans out there. You can get involved with us, 615-737-1025. Text or call. We're actually going to give away some tickets here. Be caller number 3, and you will win a pair of tickets to Cirque du Soleil coming up July 18th, which is Thursday, 7:30 p.m. So be caller number 3 now, and you'll win those tickets to Cirque du Soleil Song Blazers at TPAC. So excited for that. You can call in for that now. We're going to wrap up our show talking some home run derby.
Yeah, Jake, walk us through what's different about the home run derby this year.
So they've changed it. For those of you who have watched in the past, about probably 6 or 7 years ago, they changed it. It used to be there were 8 to start. They would all go through their round. The top 4 home run getters would move on.
Yep.
Then they do the same thing down to 2. No head-to-head. Then they flipped to the other side and just did an 8-person bracket and seeded them 1 through 8 based on how many home runs they hit, and went through the bracket like that. Now they've got a hybrid. So the first round, everybody's going to go through their round, which you only get 40 pitches, which I am a huge fan of this instead of the timing aspect, because last time the rule was supposed to be the ball has to hit the ground or get out of the park before you throw the next one.
Yeah.
But they couldn't enforce it really. So guys were just throwing as many pitches as they want. Now it's 40 pitches or 3 minutes. The top 4 out of those 8 will move on, and then it becomes a bracket. If everybody can follow me, all 8 hit, 4 most home runs move on, and they seed them 1 through 4, and then it's a bracket to find out the winner.
Yeah, that's interesting. I really just like the playoff bracket throughout the whole thing, to be honest with you. But, you know,
it did make it tough because you could hit the second most home runs, but not move on.
Yeah, exactly.
So I like that they're at least trying to deal with it a little bit, but we'll see how it works out. This is the first time that they're doing this. I'm just glad that it's not timing where you can just throw as many pitches as you want. You get 40 pitches, which also means they can't be as selective. Because it's not swings, it's pitches. So if your pitcher's bad, man, you're in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. So this year's participants, I'll read them off here for you. It's Pete Alonso, who has 19 homers this year. Marcelo Zuna with 24 so far. Teoscar Hernandez from the Dodgers with 19. Alec Baum over there with the Philadelphia Phillies with 11. You got Gunnar Henderson with 28. Jose Ramirez with 23. Adalis Garcia with 17, and Bobby Witt Jr. with 16. Jake, I know we don't have to make picks right now unless you want to.
We can do it.
Yeah.
We can make the picks right now.
I know someone that I was kind of thinking of a little bit more lately after seeing the lineup was Teoscar Hernandez.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to set my pick with Pete Alonso.
That's where Willie was.
Yeah.
Willie Mets fan.
Yeah. What else is Willie going to go?
Well, Pete Alonso, 2-time Derby champion, I believe.
I think so. Yeah.
So he's trying to get to 3, which I think would match Ken Griffey Jr. is the only one to win 3. I think I saw that earlier today. So Pete Alonso going for that. That's a good pick. I think he's probably the favorite. I'm going to go with the hometown guy. Adolis Garcia in Arlington.
Okay.
I think he gets it done in front of the home crowd. We've seen that before. Like Bryce Harper won it in DC when he participated. I think maybe it was Pete Alonso won it in New York.
Yeah, so I just looked it up. This is Pete's 5th consecutive Derby appearance.
This guy loves it.
He won it in his first 2 attempts in 2019 and 2021. So there you go. He fell short the past 2 years. So he could put his name in the history books. This is Fox Sports as Ken Griffey Jr. is the only player to win the Derby 3 times. So there you go.
So Pete Alonso looking for history and his 3rd Derby championship. I know there are a few others with 2. Prince Fielder had 2. I'm blanking. I know Josh Hamilton is the guy that everybody remembers from that.
Cespedes.
Cespedes, yes. And Hamilton had that ridiculous outburst in Yankee Stadium like 15 years ago. That was a fun one to watch. Which brings me to my question here for you guys. What's your favorite of these like pre-All-Star events where it's just guys out there having fun, home run derby, slam dunk, and the NHL skills, which has become a bigger thing lately, and the Pro Bowl games, the jewel of the NFL the last couple of years?
Obviously, I think you know where I'm going to go with this. Is going to be back to hockey. Anytime I can go back to hockey after not talking about it for a while is definitely where I will stick to. But the hardest shot competition is always something that
That's
I
a fun one.
wait to watch for. And it's been, Ian, you could probably agree with me. It's so hard to watch the awards and the skills comp because it's A, so cringy. And, and B, it's also like, what are all these new things that we never see in the middle of games that actually happen? Like the stick handling things, I get. The agility things, sure, why not?
Speed test, okay.
Sure. Like those things make sense. But like, I mean, I guess the passing is kind of interesting, but I wish they did something different with that, to be honest. They do like the sauce passing and all
into
that.
those like mini nets.
It's kind of cool, but that's more practice for me. I don't know. I like growing up playing, I didn't like doing those, but anyway, but the hardest shot, Shea Weber will live in infamy for me, at least, just with how he did that. Zdeno Chara was always fun to watch for that too.
The guy.
There was a guy, Martin Ferk, that hit the world's hardest shot when he did it. Was not in the NHL. Obviously got to throw in something minor league, but he did hit a really hard shot. I don't remember what it was. I think it was 108 something or maybe 110. But anyway, the hardest shot for me, NHL hardest shot, is something I stick around the wait for. But listeners, let us know too. Is there some event that you wait for as well? 615-737-1025. There's all kinds. So,
I mean, growing up, I used to love the 3-point contest and the slam dunk contest in the NBA. Growing up,
I think so too.
Those were big time.
Those were fun, especially when the Stars used to be involved with it, which I guess has only changed in the last couple of years. But it feels like now it's these G League guys who jump in there, and they're doing great dunks, but it's like we're not seeing Michael Jordan.
Who's
do it anymore?
Who's the guy that comes back every year and does it?
Is it Derek Jones?
Maybe.
But like even like the Aaron Gordon, Zach LaVine one, that was awesome, and that was only like 6 or 7 years ago. It just feels like we aren't getting great dunk contest anymore. I think the Derby would probably be my number one growing up. I used to love sitting down like as a kid, 12 years old.
Sure.
Like I love the Derby more than the All-Star game.
Yeah.
And the All-Star game in the MLB used to mean something. It doesn't anymore, if I'm not mistaken.
Doesn't it mean we looked it up last Saturday, I think.
It used to decide home field advantage in the World Series.
Yep.
Which so those guys played for it, especially if you were on a contending team. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, I know as a Tigers fan, the Tigers, I think, had a better record than the Giants the year they went to the World Series in 2012, but they had to go on the road to San Francisco to start the series, and the Panda hit 3 home runs off Justin Verlander in that game. So the All-Star game used to mean something. It doesn't anymore, and I love the Derby. Like growing up, Monday of All-Star weekend, that was that would be appointment viewing for me.
Yeah.
If you have thoughts on any of this, you can text 615-737-1025. One texter on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says there is nothing in all caps entertaining about the Pro Bowl anymore. And I am 100% with you, texter.
Stamp of approval.
That is the Pro Bowl games might be the worst thing in sports.
They've got to change it.
It's awful.
And it's flag football now.
Not that I watched the Pro Bowl in general to start, but like it's kind of become a joke now.
Do they need to make some sort of compensation prize for them? Even
I think they have.
I mean, you gotta
get
just
money.
They just gotta scrap the game.
And
do some like fun off the wall kind of stuff that you don't normally see football players do.
Sure.
Like I don't know.
And I think they tried to do that. Like they had them do a long drive competition as part of the Pro Bowl games one year.
Yeah.
And all the kickers and punters won it.
Sounds about right. I don't know. They need to figure something out.
It's not fun.
I want to see longest throw again.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Like longest throw, the dodgeball that they do is okay, I guess.
I don't know. Do they do like tug of war? Can you make it just like a field day?
Yeah,
That'd be
I'm good
kind of
with
cool.
that.
Yeah.
Do
Like we used to do in the like as a kid in elementary school, you do field day, where it's like the egg thing or some type of sack race, or I don't know.
I don't know.
I think it'd be cool to have whoever the captains are for this, they kind of have a menu to like pick from. And then when they do the draft, they, after that's all done, they will tell whoever, okay, these are the events that we want for tomorrow or something. I don't know. Something like that. It needs to be different.
The Pro Bowl games are not good. And I don't want it to go back to Sean Taylor taking heads off in the Pro Bowl. Like that's
he about killed that punter.
Yes, that's not what we want. No one needs to get injured, but they need to figure something out to make it less of a joke, because that's kind of what it is right now.
Yeah.
Talking all-star events with the Home Run Derby tonight, and you can listen in right here on the game. 7:00 coverage starts, and listen to that. Again, we just listed off all the participants. We'll go through them here quickly. Pete Alonso, Alec Boehm, Adolis Garcia, Gunnar Henderson, Teoscar Hernandez, Marcelo Zuna, Jose Ramirez, and Bobby Witt will be swinging for the fences tonight down in Texas. We'll take one final break here on the program. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show. I know we got a text about some Pred stuff that Keyser wanted to get into, and we'll keep talking some Derby and All-Star Game as well. That's up next as we finish up the show here on this Monday evening. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Final segment on this Monday. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Jake Lyman, Nick Keyser, filling in for Jared today. I'll be back tomorrow and Wednesday with Adam Vingan for both those shows, 2 to 6. Tune in right here.
Yeah.
Adam and I have been texting. He has asked me to get a full review of College Football 25 for tomorrow. So,
how much sleep will you get, though?
Oh, not a lot. We're I'm kidding.
What includes a full review there? How many hours are we talking? You put in for that bad boy?
I think I've got to go home, and I've just got to play a game, right, to just figure it out, get in the groove, and then we'll hop into some Dynasty, maybe some Road to Glory. We will get a well-rounded review for all of you out there if you're still considering buying the game. So me and Adam said the final hour of the show, 5 o'clock hour tomorrow, we'll talk some College Football 25. Again, wrapping up the show here. One texter on our text line, Matthew in Nashville, has actually texted a few times during this. Wanted to know how excited we are to see Paul Skeens go up against Aaron Judge. Really, that whole top of the AL lineup: Gunnar Henderson, Juan Soto, Aaron Judge. That's going to be really fun tomorrow night.
Yeah.
I am a little upset, though. Nothing against Corbin Burns, but Tarek Skubal should be starting on the other side for the AL. He has better – every stat is better than Corbin Burns, but Bruce Bochy's like 90, so maybe he can't read that.
Swinging.
I'm very disappointed. Tarek has been the best pitcher in baseball. He should be starting
Corbin
the All-Star
Burns,
game.
He's a former Brave, or he's former Brave. He's a former Brewers guy.
Yes, that is true. He's part of the Sounds family.
Did he not ever make an appearance down here ever for like a rehab?
I'm sure he did.
Maybe. It doesn't matter that
It doesn't matter. I'm mostly kidding. Tarek will probably pitch the second inning, but he should be the starter.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, Nick, I know there was a texter earlier who wanted to know about Yaroslav Askarov. Did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the text that brought that to my attention, but I will say, let me see. Here we go. James on our text line. I wanted to get that right. So thanks for being patient for just a second. But James, he asked us a couple hours ago, this was last hour. He said, I know it's off topic, but can anybody really verify that Askarov, like what he wants to, if he really wants to be traded or not? And so the most recent update that I could provide for any Preds fans tuning in to the end of Stillman and Company currently, as I'm trying to form words, I have a dry mouth currently, but that's okay. Yaroslav Askarov's agent, he spoke to a Russian outlet, and I'd like to share this. I've translated it, and Google's good for that too. It kind of helped me out, but I translated it elsewhere too, where it basically says from his agent, Dan Milstein, and I quote, Yaroslav Askarov has potential and should become an elite goalkeeper in the future. Today, we are working together with the club on various options. Yaroslav has proven to everyone that he is an NHL player. So I'm interested to see what Yaroslav has to say when he gets to Nashville, guys. But I would say this summer, they are trying to find a fit for him. It doesn't matter where it is. Barry's been out front with it saying, I'm going to take calls on him. He's like, I know I'm getting calls on him. So there's going to be conversations. I'm interested to see what teams want a goalie like that. But then again, I always go back to it. He's not a proven commodity yet. We have to stand by that. You've got a really high bar for him as an organization. He's played really well, but also too, when the biggest moments have come up for him, he's done well, but he's also been hurt or unavailable for those, or he's not been consistent for those. So that's where I stand with him. Would I have him as a backup goalie next year? I mean, maybe. I don't really want to commit to that yet. They signed Scott Wedgwood, who we're going to hear from for the first time on Wednesday, by the way. So stay tuned for that at thegamenashville.com. I'll have you covered there. But there's plenty of guys that I think could fill in as a backup goalie. And I just don't think Askarov will be ready to fill that full time yet. We know who it is long term. Okay. Saros.
Yeah.
Big extension. We know that that's going to be the case. He's got a full no move for the first 6 years. The last two, they're going to be modified. And so, there's a lot that can happen between now and then. I mean, in sports, anything can change rapidly, but that's about the best update that you've got right now from at least someone affiliated with Askarov. We won't hear from him until September. So you have to wait and find out.
Barry Trotz with some decisions to make. And a happy birthday to Barry Trotz here on this Monday afternoon. And we'll talk some Preds tomorrow. Steven Stamkos talking to the media at noon, I believe. And then is he talking to William Demas?
Okay, so yes, that is true. The schedule for this week is going to be Stamkos meets with media at noon. He's supposed to call in tentatively around 12:40 to Willie and Demas tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. He'll be over the phone. And then on Wednesday, Brady Shea and Scott Wedgwood will be available to the media as well. So for the Preds fans out there, keep it locked on your socials. We'll have all the coverage there for you this week.
Looking forward to it. I'll be on with Adam Vingan. Sure, we'll have plenty of Preds talk tomorrow as well from 2 to 6 right here on Stillman and Company. ESPN Radio coming up next with the Home Run Derby up at 7. We'll talk to you tomorrow here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
See ya.